Her life was only just starting. Her passion was aiding those whose lives had already ended. She never could have anticipated that her 24th birthday would bring not dreams, hopes, or wishes, but death. It takes an exceptional person to want to work in the funeral industry. For one, they must be okay with being surrounded by death daily. Empathy and compassion are two of the most vital characteristics for anyone that wants to enter the funeral industry. They must understand when to give families space and respect the grieving process. Rachel Nicoletta Anderson was one of those people, a person with a pure heart whose passion was to help those who had just lost their loved ones, or even their own lives. Rachel was born in Warren, Ohio on January 28, 1994, to William, Bill, and Patricia Trish Anderson. Rachel had one younger brother, John Anderson, and they grew up in Warren, Ohio. Warren is a relatively small city in northwest Ohio along the Mahoning River. General Motors and Packard Electric are two of the area's biggest employers. Warren has a number of museums, including the Trumbull County Museum and the National Packard Museum. Golf courses, breweries, and a drive-in theater are all nearby as well. The city is described as hip meets blue collar, with a lot of character in downtown Warren. Dave Grohl Alley honors the former Nirvana drummer and Foo Fighters frontman, Dave Grohl, who is a native of Warren. Many people are actually surprised to hear that he's from Warren because they assume he's from the Pacific Northwest, like Kurt Cobain was. Public artwork lines Dave Grohl Alley, and among the works on display are murals, sculptures, and the world's longest drumsticks, which measure 23 feet long. The local high school, Warren G. Harding, named after the U.S. president born in the city, produces excellent athletes. People in Warren love sports, especially local sports, and they spend a lot of their time playing and watching them. The Scrappers, a minor league baseball team, is quite popular among the locals during baseball season. This is where Rachel Anderson grew up, and she graduated from Warren G. Harding High School in 2012. During high school, Rachel was a member of the National Honor Society. However, Rachel was more than just a talented student. She was an exceptional athlete. She played soccer and volleyball, and she also participated in the school band. During high school, Rachel worked at Giant Eagle, a local neighborhood grocery store chain with locations in West Virginia, Indiana, Pennsylvania, Maryland, and Ohio. Rachel loved her job. Anything she did with joy, and to know her was to love her. She would come to work every day with a giant smile on her face. The locals knew Rachel, and she touched the lives of her co-workers and customers. Rachel was beautiful. She had long blonde hair and green eyes, but it wasn't just her physical beauty that drew people to her. She was bubbly, friendly, and had a truly infectious laugh that would make you crack up just hearing it. She really did light up a room when she entered. Rachel's ambition was a little bit different than a lot of other high school graduates. She wanted to become a funeral director and embalmer, which led her to enroll at Youngstown State University after graduating from Warren G. Harding High School. Despite sometimes being confused with one another, funeral directors and embalmers are two different positions or careers. Embalmers sanitize and prepare bodies for burial, while funeral directors work with grieving families, assist with funeral planning services, and oversee all burial or cremation arrangements. Even though both occupations require deep respect for the deceased, embalmers focus more on the science of death, while morticians concentrate on delivering personalized care to the families. After completing the prerequisites at Youngstown State University, Rachel applied to the Cincinnati College of Mortuary Science. This is an acclaimed institution. Joseph Henry Clark founded the Cincinnati College of Mortuary Science, CCMS, in 1882 to train embalmers during the Civil War. In time, CCMS became known as the father of embalming schools. In 1980, CCMS received authorization from Ohio Regents to grant students an Associate of Applied Science degree. All this to say, the College of Mortuary Science at CCMS became the very first private college in the nation to offer a bachelor's degree in mortuary science in 1986. To this day, CCMS has maintained its regional and professional certifications. It's the go-to school if you want to study mortuary science. According to its mission statement, The Cincinnati College of Mortuary Science endeavors to develop professionals who can function with distinction within their chosen profession and within the community of life. They strive to provide the best education possible, and that's exactly why Rachel was excited to enroll. While in mortuary school, Rachel worked at a funeral home, Nagel Club and Islandorf Funeral Home in Norwood, Ohio. The staff taught Rachel a lot, especially the owner, Bernard, who had owned the business since the 1970s. Jackie and Tara, the funeral director and the embalmer, became Rachel's mentors and friends. They were like a second family to her. After graduating from CCMS, Rachel became a member of the Ohio Funeral Directors Association and spent her internship with Shaw Davis Funeral Home in Columbus. Rachel had never been happier. The owner of the funeral home treated her like family. She loved her colleagues and even told her mom, "I will work for them forever." Rachel had no idea what was going to happen. As Rachel got closer to her 24th birthday, her internship at the funeral home was nearly completed, but she wasn't stressed about finding a job because the owner had already offered her a full-time position, which she would have accepted if given the chance. She had plans to stay there permanently. Earlier that month, she even moved from Warren to Columbus to be closer to her job. Her new apartment was on Allegheny Street on the east side of the city. Cute, two-story apartments in the Cardinal Creek apartment complex at 3044 Allegheny Avenue. Rachel's younger brother, John Anderson, wanted to throw her an awesome 24th birthday party, so he got mutual friends together and decided to have it at one of Rachel's friends' houses, Jonathan Kennedy and his wife, Tina. They were more than happy to host her birthday party. They lived across the city, on the west side of Columbus. The party was planned for the night before Rachel's birthday on Saturday, January 27th. Jonathan Kennedy was Rachel's very close friend from Warren G. Harding High School. She also had a close relationship with Jonathan's sister when they were growing up, and they spent a lot of time together. Her brother, John Anderson, still lived in Warren, Ohio, so he had to drive almost 3 hours to Columbus for Rachel's birthday. He planned to spend the entire weekend with her. He arrived on Friday, January 26th, the night before the party, and hung out at Rachel's apartment with Jonathan and Tina. Since Rachel had to work the next day, she gave her brother her primary key so he could come and go while she was gone. Rachel's spare key was already with Tina for emergency purposes. After finishing her shift at the funeral home, Rachel returned home to get ready for her birthday party. There were about 8 people at Jonathan and Tina's house for Rachel's party, including Rachel, her brother John, Jonathan and Tina. Throughout the night, everyone hung out, relaxed, and enjoyed themselves. They smoked a little weed, drank a little alcohol, and just celebrated Rachel's 24th birthday. Later in the night, a few of them, including Rachel, John, and Tina, left the party to go to a nearby club to dance, drink, and hang out a little more, while the rest of the guests remained behind. That night, after returning from the club, Rachel and her brother decided to crash at Jonathan and Tina's house. The next morning, on January 28th, Rachel's birthday, she and her brother drove back to her apartment after leaving Jonathan and Tina's. Her brother didn't want to leave right away. He needed to decompress after everything they did the night before. So, he hung out at her apartment for about an hour before hitting the road to drive back to Warren. Remember, it's a 3-hour drive. When he got home, while changing and settling in, he realized he forgot to give Rachel her key. He immediately called her to let her know. This call was made at 1:58 p.m. Just a minute later, after talking to her brother, Rachel texted Jonathan to arrange to pick up her spare key later in the day from Tina and him. Jonathan and Tina had to drive one of the party guests who attended Rachel's party the night before back to their house in Athens, Ohio. But they told Rachel she could stop by when they returned home and said they'd let her know when they got back. After she got off work, Rachel texted Jonathan at 6:17 p.m. TO, let him know she was done with work. He said, "Come on over." She told him, "Okay, I'll be there in about 20 minutes." Rachel arrived at Jonathan and Tina's around 6:30 p.m. She stayed for about 10 minutes, said goodbye and thank you, and left to go back to her place. On the way home, Rachel called her mom, and they talked on her way back. The call lasted about 10 minutes. The following day, Monday, January 29th, Rachel didn't show up to work at the funeral home. This was highly unusual. Isn't that the way a lot of people in these stories find out that something is wrong? So many people work from home now. I feel like things have changed so much, even from just 2018. It would take longer to know if someone went missing or something wasn't right. Rachel was close to her boss and his family, so she wouldn't miss work without informing them. In this case, they knew something wasn't right. The funeral parlor manager sent another employee, Trent Snyder, to check on Rachel. This was around noon. Trent arrived at Rachel's apartment and knocked on the door for several minutes without getting a response. Trent walked around and found the apartment complex manager on site asking to go inside Rachel's apartment to check on her, but the complex manager refused. At this point, Trent decided to call the police after he wasn't able to get anyone to assist him in checking on Rachel. As Trent spoke to the 911 dispatcher, he was looking through Rachel's living room window and saw a candle lit, sitting on her coffee table. That did not seem right, especially for someone like Rachel, who was very responsible. Then Trent looked out into the parking lot and saw Rachel's car was not in her usual parking spot. Instead, it was parked around the corner from her unit, rather than in front of it. He gave all this information to the dispatcher. After some time, the apartment manager came back to speak with Trent and said there was another person listed on the lease, and that person would need to give permission to enter. When Trent asked who, the manager explained it was a guy named Sean Riggs. Trent was not aware that anyone else lived with Rachel, but he had no choice but to wait. The complex manager got hold of Sean, who was actually Rachel's former roommate and ex-boyfriend. Even though Sean no longer lived with Rachel, he still had a key to her apartment and was still on the lease. Sean gave the property manager permission to enter Rachel's apartment, and she did. Upon opening the door, she briefly inspected it. Nothing seemed out of place. There were no signs of a struggle, and nothing worried her. No broken glass or overturned furniture. She just walked around, peeked into different areas, blew out the candle, and left to meet with the police and Trent outside. She told them that nothing appeared to have happened or seemed out of place. So all three of them left because there was nothing else they felt they could do at the moment. At this point, Rachel's boss, Jonathan, was made aware that Rachel did not show up for work. He tried calling her phone several times and did not get an answer. He was also informed that the property manager had spoken to Sean, so he called Sean, but Sean said he had no information for him. At this point, Jonathan was very concerned. He got in his car and drove over to Rachel's apartment. He banged on the door and got no answer. He tried to open both her front and back doors, but they were both locked and he couldn't get in. So, he walked around and peered into her windows. He grew more concerned as every minute passed. It worried Jonathan that Rachel's car wasn't where it should have been. She would not have parked it in someone else's spot. She had a designated spot in front of her unit. After several unsuccessful attempts to contact Rachel by phone again, Jonathan happened to see a police car. He flagged it down, explained the situation, and requested a welfare check on his friend. Every time I read something like this, I always think, I hope I'm never in this position where I have to ask for a welfare check on my friend. But at least Rachel had friends like this who cared. The property manager returned and opened Rachel's apartment door again, this time in front of the police and Jonathan. Jonathan walked right in and went up to the second floor while the manager and the officer remained in Rachel's living room. Suddenly, while Jonathan was upstairs, a blood-curdling scream rang out. Jonathan rushed down the stairs and out the door, screaming to the police that Rachel was lying lifeless in her bedroom closet. The officer on the scene, Frank Sclafani, immediately radioed for backup while tending to Jonathan, who was pale and utterly freaked out. Of course, he had just found his best friend, seemingly deceased. Officer Sclafani went back inside Rachel's apartment and made his way upstairs. The bedroom closet was already open, and he peered inside. He could clearly see Rachel wrapped up in what looked like a comforter. He could also tell she had been gagged with something. There was a garment over her head and another around her neck, tied to the doorknob of the closet. When Columbus police detectives arrived, they called the Ohio Bureau of Criminal Investigation, BCI, for assistance. A BCI investigator, Agent Joshua Durst, searched the apartment and found no signs of forced entry on either the front or back doors. There seemed to be no evidence of a struggle on the first floor, no blood was found, and nothing looked out of place. Upon closer inspection, he located Rachel's purse on the floor in the living room, and it appeared to have been rummaged through and dumped out. Her driver's license and a receipt from Arby's were among the items on the floor. When Agent Durst looked at the receipt, he noted the date, January 28th. The time was 7:32, but he couldn't tell if it was AM or PM because the ink was dull in that area. Durst also noticed remnants of food from Arby's in the living room, a French fry box, an Arby's drink cup, and an open used ketchup packet. Here are the items he asked the CSI team to collect: a cell phone, a laptop computer, a water bottle, a Pepsi can, a few cigarette and cigar butts, and a glass smoking pipe. They were all bagged as evidence. The team did not find any cash, and no credit or debit cards were in Rachel's purse or anywhere in the home, which seemed odd. This could have been some kind of robbery, but the person didn't break in. Maybe they followed her in, or maybe someone staged it to look like a robbery when it wasn't. They weren't sure, and they needed more information. And they were about to get it in Rachel's bedroom. Agent Durst found Rachel lying next to a pillow in the upstairs bedroom closet, where Jonathan had told the officer he found her, and where Officer Frank Sclafani informed Durst he confirmed by peering inside himself. Durst noted that there was a very large saturated portion of the floor near the foot of Rachel's bed. There was a clothing iron, like a steam iron, with its cord cut and knotted up. When he looked closer, there appeared to be hair attached to it, as well as what looked like blood around the doorknob. On the outside portion of the closet was another knotted-up cord. This one belonged to a heating blanket. A pair of black leggings were also wrapped around this closet doorknob. As Agent Durst followed the cord, it stretched into the closet and then around Rachel's neck. It wasn't just draped around her neck, it was very tightly wound and then knotted. As Agent Durst pulled a thick, comforter-like blanket off Rachel, it exposed the rest of her body, and he could see that her wrists and ankles were bound together in a hogtie fashion with cords from her window blinds, her hair dryer, and curling iron. It's interesting that all these items came right from her room. It just seemed really personal. There was also a black t-shirt over her head, positioned like a hood. A black piece of material was sticking out of her mouth and had been stuck down her throat. Rachel was found only wearing a black tank top. She was not clothed from the waist down. As Durst kneeled down to let the CSI team move in and retrieve Rachel's body, a black pair of underwear was found underneath her. The cord and the items binding Rachel were removed, and that was when the sheer brutality of this crime was revealed. There was a deep stab wound to her neck and at the base of her skull. She was transported to the coroner's office for a full autopsy report. Meanwhile, investigators were diligently sweeping through Rachel's entire apartment, collecting potential evidence. BCI agents tested for fingerprints, took swabs of all the cords and various surfaces all over her apartment and her car, which we know was not in the right parking spot. The investigators were hoping to find what they call touch DNA, also referred to as trace DNA. It only requires a very small sample and usually consists of skin cells or even sweat left behind on an object when it's just casually touched. The dark stain at the foot of the bed was also swabbed to test for blood. It was big enough to assume that it was blood, and it was leading from the foot of the bed into the closet. Rachel's body was also swabbed, and in doing so, it was obvious that male DNA in the form of seminal fluid was present inside of her, as well as on the outside of her pelvic region and on her inner thighs. It was also indicated by injury to that area that Rachel suffered forced intercourse and struggled for a prolonged period of time. Her scalp had several lacerations and fractures, and the wound to her neck was so forceful that it broke off a piece of her skull. There were defensive wounds on her hands, and because Rachel's wrists and ankles were red, The medical examiner believed that she was alive when she was bound, probably so she would stop fighting. There were hemorrhages on her eyelids where the vessels in her eyes had become so overfilled that they basically broke due to the circulation being cut off. The autopsy report also determined that Rachel's cause of death was either the wound to her head or ligature strangulation. Either one of them could have been a direct cause. When investigators noticed Rachel's debit card was missing, they immediately contacted her bank and identified all the places where her card was accessed after Saturday. Rachel's bank records indicated her car was used at a food mart that was about a mile away from her apartment on January 28, 2018 at 9:43 p.m. In surveillance videos of the grocery store, Rachel's car is seen pulling into that parking lot. Afterward, a man gets out of Rachel's car from the passenger side, enters the store, uses the ATM, and returns. Investigators could see a hand on the driver's side of the car, but the person on the driver's side never got out. Video footage from that evening shows Rachel's debit card being used several more times, and the same pattern continued. A man would get out of the passenger side, use the ATM, or make a purchase, and then return to the car and drive away. So it was time for investigators to start interviewing people close to Rachel, starting with Rachel's brother. Obviously, being her brother, he was very close to her. They wanted to gather some information and see if he could point them in the direction of possible suspects. Considering he wasn't in town at the time of her murder and was back home in Warren, he was not initially a suspect of any kind. They were interviewing him to gather more information about Rachel, and even though it was very tough for John to speak to investigators, he knew how important it was to provide them with any possible information that he could think of. The first name that came out of his mouth was Jonathan Kennedy. Now, I don't like to jump to conclusions, but when I'm reading about these cases and doing my initial research, there are things that jump out at me. One of those things that I thought was just a little bit odd was how close Rachel seemed to be to another woman's husband. I understand they were friends from high school and that Rachel was really good friends with Jonathan's sister growing up, but the fact that they were so close and she was the one who would call him asking to coordinate, getting the key and things like that. He was also a contact that her boss knew about. Seemed like they were more than friends. However, I felt like my assumption was correct when I heard this interview with Rachel's brother. Guess what? He tells investigators that he had a really unusual conversation with his sister Rachel 2 weeks before her birthday party. Rachel ends up telling her brother that she and Jonathan had been hanging out with some friends and they did some acid. They were tripping. During the night, she told her brother that Jonathan kind of had this falling out while they were high. Why? She started feeling like he was coming on to her. In her words, she told her brother he was giving her sexual vibes. Later in the night, she tells her brother that Jonathan ended up insulting her by calling her a virus. Rachel definitely felt uncomfortable and told John that she was afraid of Jonathan. So, while Rachel's brother is explaining all this, he's also explaining to everyone that there was a birthday party at Jonathan and Tina's house. Of course, investigators are like, wait a minute, you just told us that 2 weeks before this party your sister said she was afraid of Jonathan. Why then are they hanging out again? That was actually something John was a little confused about himself. He said that Rachel just acted like nothing happened after that conversation, and she never mentioned having any concerns about Jonathan ever again. At the party, everything seemed completely fine. Everyone was friendly, and it seemed like they were all just good friends as they'd always been. Detective Hughes was interviewing John and asked if it was okay if they got a swab of his DNA. Of course, he wanted to help in any way he could, so he said yes, and they got a swab. They asked him if there was anyone else that they should look into, and John said, "Yeah, you should also look into Sean Griggs." He explained that Sean was Rachel's ex-boyfriend, still had a key to her place and was on the lease. But then there was this other person that John told the police about. However, he didn't have a name. He said that Rachel complained about a guy in the apartment complex who just seemed off to her. So now Detective Hughes has to go out and interview Jonathan Sean and find out who this mystery man is in the apartment complex that Rachel could have complained about. Well, Jonathan is interviewed. He's a mess. He says he has nothing to do with Rachel's murder. She was a very close friend of his since high school. He's married to Tina, but there's nothing going on between him and Rachel. He says he was with Tina the evening that Rachel was murdered, so his wife is his alibi. We've heard that so many times, not the best alibi, but an alibi nevertheless. And I like to give you as much information as possible. As far as Rachel's ex-boyfriend Sean and the unknown man at the apartment complex, both of those men were ruled out right away because neither one of them was in town at the time that Rachel was determined to have been murdered. However, the investigation kind of went in a totally different direction before they could even dive into Jonathan. The fact that Rachel's debit cards were missing was a huge clue. As I told you, her not having any cash or cards anywhere around her house definitely raised a red flag for investigators. The first thing Detective Hughes did when he found this information out was contact Rachel's bank. That's why they were able to pinpoint all the locations where her debit card had been used. They went to those locations and were able to get the surveillance footage. The first place that they indicated her card had been used was, as I had told you, a mile or two from her apartment. It was on January 28th at 9:43 p.m. Now remember the Arby's receipts that Agent Durst found on the floor, and he didn't know whether they were from 7 a.m. or p.m. Well, the fact that there were French fries, a French fry box, seemed like this would be p.m. So the fact that her card was being used just a couple of hours later at 9:43 pp. Gives them a bit of a timeline. 2 hours later, it was being used at the Food Mart on East Main Street. Now, the thing is, her card was also used at the ATM inside the Food Mart and several other ATMs that evening. Different ATMs at different places, different stores. On the afternoon of Monday, January 29th, her debit card was used on the north side of Columbus at Fair Food Mart on Cleveland Avenue. The same day, a few miles north on Cleveland Avenue, it was used at City Trends and at DSW Shoe Store. It was also used at a Kroger and at Hollywood Casino. Rachel's debit card was used 2 more days, Tuesday, January 30th, and Thursday, February 1st. Since Rachel was deceased, it's clearly not her making these purchases, so they have a lot of different places to gather surveillance from. The first one I really want to look at is the Food Mart. This was a transaction at 9:43 p.m., and this was the video that had the passenger getting out, going to the ATM, and going back to the passenger side of the vehicle. This is also the video where they see a person's hand on the driver's side of the car, but that person never gets out. So who is driving this vehicle? They go inside and start to interview the store clerk who was there when this transaction was happening. They show the clerk the video camera footage, and he says, "I know who's getting out of the passenger side. His name is Anthony Sleets." The clerk explains that he sees this man, Anthony, around all the time panhandling in the area and believes that he doesn't have a home and sleeps in the store parking lot. So this is going to be hard for detectives because they have a person without a residence. They sort of just have to wait around and see if he comes back. That's exactly what they're going to do. They also tell the store clerk, "If you see this Anthony Sleets person, notify us immediately." Sure enough, on February 6th, 2018, Detective Hughes gets a call from the store clerk. He says, "Anthony's in front of the Food Mart." So patrol officers go out and find Anthony Sleets in front of that store. They bring him in for questioning. Now wait until you hear what this man tells investigators. I could not believe it. I didn't know if it was a lie or if it was the truth, because it sounded really unusual, almost like it was rehearsed. He says that on the night of Sunday, January 28th, he was outside on Main Street when a man came out of the Food Mart and called out to him. He said he'd never seen this guy before. He was just a stranger. He told him he was probably in his 30s, possibly early 40s, 5 feet 7 inches, dark skin, kind of slanted eyes, sort of chubby cheeks, short hair, a stocky frame, and had a little bit of a southern accent. He said the guy was in a small, green 4-door car, kind of like a station wagon. The man told Anthony that he had just gotten into a fight with his girlfriend and that the girlfriend had been trying to steal his money, so he needed help getting money from her debit card. He said, "Listen, it's my girlfriend's card. I know the PIN. I just don't want to be the one to do it. Can you give me some help? In exchange, I'll give you a hotel room for the night." Of course, Anthony, being someone without a home, found this really enticing and agreed. All he had to do was enter the correct PIN number and get the money out of the ATM. He tells investigators that he attempted to get $2,000 from an ATM using Rachel's debit card, but he could only get $40. Anthony Sleets tells investigators that the guy said, "Okay, let's try it at some other locations." So they went to another food mart. Still, they were only able to get a little bit of money out. This continued until they got around $400 and some cigarettes and other miscellaneous items with Rachel's debit card. And guess what? This Sleets guy says that the man never gave him a hotel room. He literally just dropped him back off at the exact same place he picked him up. Police asked, "Are you sure about that? Are you sure you didn't go anywhere else? Are you sure you didn't go to a woman's apartment?" And he's like, "No, I didn't go anywhere else." He agrees to submit a DNA sample, which they do collect. So Detective Hughes has a lot of information. He's got a pretty good description that detectives can use and run against other suspects or potential people in mind. But they also continue to look at the locations where the card had been used. One of the videos shows a man trying to conceal his face while using the debit card at an ATM. But when they look at some additional footage from other locations, they realize that there's a woman coming out of the car, and sometimes it's just a woman using the card with no man in sight. I don't know about you, but I just kept going back to Jonathan and Tina. Investigators are diving into this, and they finally get a lead, a name, Deborah Pardon. Someone identified her as the woman who was seen entering those stores and using Rachel's debit card. But who is Deborah Pardon? Detective Hughes tracks Deborah down. It turns out she lives in a place called Linden, only 15 minutes away from Rachel's apartment complex. So they pay her a visit. Investigators tell her they're investigating the murder of Rachel Anderson, and Deborah is caught off guard. She has no idea what's going on. She says she does not know who Rachel is. They show her a picture, and she doesn't recognize Rachel at all. But then they start asking whether she knows anything about a debit card. And that's when Deborah gives them information about the fact that she had been using a debit card that didn't belong to her. They asked her where, and she says City Trends, Kroger, and the casino. That's when they showed her a snapshot of the surveillance video and said, "Is that you?" She admitted it was. So of course they're like, "Deborah, you have Rachel Anderson's card. Why are you in possession of a card from a woman who was murdered?" And that's when she's like, "Wait a minute. I was given this card by my brother." Again, they're pressing her. This is a murder investigation. They ask, "Okay, and your brother's name is Rachel Anderson?" She says no. So they ask, "What gave you the right or thought that this was okay?" She explains, "My brother dates a woman named Bernita Anderson. I saw the name Anderson and assumed it was somehow related to his girlfriend. Plus he knew the PIN number. I assumed he was allowed to use the card." So they're like, "Okay, here's the deal. You're going to either tell us everything right now, or we're going to charge you with credit card fraud." It turns out Deborah has a lengthy criminal record and doesn't want to get into more trouble, so she tells detectives everything she knows, or I should say, everyone she knows. She says, "Listen, my brother comes and stays with me every now and then, and sometimes I let him drive my green Ford or Hyundai Accent. But he also stays at his girlfriend's house, the one I mentioned, Bernita Anderson. They have a back and forth relationship. Sometimes they're on good terms, sometimes they are not." Then she says she's still in possession of some of the items she bought with Rachel's debit card. Officers were able to recover clothing with tags on them from City Trends and find casino receipts. The next thing they want to know is who Bernita Anderson is. It turns out, and I couldn't believe this, but it's true, Bernita Anderson lives in the exact same apartment complex on the exact same street as Rachel Anderson. Not only that, The back door of Rachel's apartment can be seen from the back door of Bernita's apartment. But more importantly, who is Deborah Pardon's brother? She finally gives them a name, Anthony Pardon. Now I understand there are two Johns essentially. There's John, Rachel's brother, and Jonathan, Rachel's friend. And now there are two Anthonys. There's Anthony Sleets, who we talked about, who doesn't have a home, and was approached by a man at the food mart saying that his girlfriend had gotten into a fight with him. And then there's Anthony Pardon, who is allegedly the man seen driving the car on the surveillance camera, and supposedly the person who approached Anthony Sleets at the food mart. So now they need to contact two people, Bernita and this Anthony Pardon person, and they need to do it fast. Meanwhile, while cleaning out Rachel's apartment, her poor mom ends up stumbling upon what is believed and later determined to be the murder weapon. She opened up a shoebox and found a 9-inch knife. There was blood and hair on it, and it matched the set in Rachel's kitchen. It was tested and came back positive for Rachel's DNA. We're now in the first week of February. They run Anthony Pardon's name in the system, and it turns out, just like his sister, he has a lengthy criminal record. I'm talking several times where he's forced intercourse on a woman, and I don't even want to go into the other people because of their age. Let's just say lower than double digits. It's absolutely disgusting. It's not something I will discuss, along with things like robbery and attempted murder. At the time that Rachel was murdered, this man had spent a total of 33 years in prison for his crimes, and he was a registered offender, a Tier 3. As detectives were going through Anthony Pardon's criminal history, they traced it all the way back to March 1979 when he was only 14 years old. He was made a ward of the courts and committed to Franklin County Children's Services. Unfortunately, he was placed in foster care, and life was not easy for Anthony. But it was what happened in 1980 that I won't talk about because it has to do with someone under the age of 1. This was the son of the foster parents who were taking care of this boy. He was 15 when he committed this crime. He was babysitting while his foster mom went out to the grocery store. And you know what he did? He told the police, and this is going to give you an idea of the mind of this person. He told them he did what he did because he got into a fight with his girlfriend and was upset. This time he was convicted of the crime as a juvenile. A year later, at 16, he was out and about already. He was inside his girlfriend's house to use her phone, and you know what he did? He did something to his girlfriend's mother. She was 39 at the time. He pulled out a knife, forced himself on her, and then stole $100 from her purse. He bound her feet and hands, gagged her, and put her in the trunk of her own car. He then drove her to a creek and threw her in it. When he looked back, he realized that she wasn't going under. Even with the way he tied her, she was floating, so he went and physically held her head under. The only reason this woman survived is that a stranger, a good Samaritan, came by, and Anthony got scared and ran off. He ran right to the store to buy shoes and a jogging outfit before he was apprehended by police. This time he was tried as an adult, but only a year later at 17, he was convicted of robbery and attempted murder. That's when he was sentenced to 25 years in prison. He was at the Southern Ohio Correctional Facility, and while he was there, he had several disciplinary infractions: possessing weapons, setting fire to mattresses, and fighting with other inmates. Ultimately, he spent more than 24 years in prison for that crime and was released in November 2006. That's when he moved to Georgia and got a job under a fake name. Why? Because he was trying to circumvent the system. He didn't want to register for his offenses so that the people in the community could know who they were living near. What kind of person is living among them? Well, he got in trouble for that. He got in trouble for forgery and failure to register, and he was convicted in Floyd County, Georgia. He spent another 9 years in prison. Why are they letting this guy out? When they did let him out, the judge gave him 20 years of probation. He was required to wear an ankle monitor. But in 2017, a year before Rachel was murdered, this man was released from prison. So he was out of prison and had the opportunity to commit this crime. He returned to Ohio in June, And at that time, he did have to check in with the sheriff's department every 90 days as part of his parole. But you know what? Remember when the judge back in Georgia said he needed an ankle monitor and 20 years of probation? Well, Ohio never gave him one. They said it was an expense issue because he had to be monitored as long as that sentence said. On August 21, 2017, just a few months before Rachel's murder, he was caught in his car doing an indecent act. They asked him, "Who is this woman? Is she a professional? What's going on?" He said, "No, it's just a friend. I'm just giving her a ride home." But later the woman contacted the police and said, "No, he was paying me." Well, nothing ever came of that. Again, at 4 a.m. on January 27th, 2018, I'm literally talking about the morning before the crime happened at Rachel's. He was caught by police for driving without a license during a traffic stop. He had a pocket knife, a kitchen knife, and a pellet gun on him. You would think that he would be arrested, especially with his record, but he wasn't. These are the kinds of cases that bother me so badly because I'm sitting here thinking, this could have been avoided. At this point, police are like, this has to be our guy. Everything adds up. The location of his girlfriend's apartment, the fact that her back door and Rachel's back door are facing each other, and the fact that he was in possession of her debit cards. But you know how the law is, it doesn't matter what it looks like, you have to prove it. Well, that wasn't going to be hard because they had his DNA on file from previous crimes. They ran his DNA against what they collected on Rachel's body, as well as from the cords at the crime scene and other areas. It was a match, so police were at Deborah's house, waiting for Anthony to come out. As he was leaving and getting into his car, they arrested him. The car he was getting into was searched, and they found a baseball hat and gloves that were consistent with the hat and gloves worn by the man in their surveillance videos. They also found clothing with tags on it, a cell phone, a knife, and an air pistol, which they did not classify as a firearm because, technically, even though it looks like one, it's not. The first thing they did was get a hold of the phone records. The BCI and forensic team were able to pinpoint where his cell phone was pinging off of the evening of Sunday, January 28th. The phone was located in the area near Rachel's apartment and at all the locations where her debit cards were used. On Sunday, January 28th, Anthony Pardon's cell phone was pinging off of the cell tower closest to Rachel's house. But you know, his girlfriend lives there as well, so was he at Rachel's, or was he just where he calls home, at Bernina Anderson's house? Well, between 7:59 p.m. and 9:25 p.m., not only did the cell tower pick him up, but Wi-Fi and GPS put Anthony near Rachel's apartment. So they really felt like they had it all. Then, the cell phone records showed an outgoing phone call on Monday, January 29th, in the same place where the clothes were bought at City Trends and DSW. On Tuesday, January 30th, his cell phone was associated with the cell tower near the Fair Food Mart and his sister's house. On Thursday, February 1st, his phone was associated with a tower near Rachel's apartment in the morning, and later pinged off of a tower near the East Side Market, where Rachel's debit card was used again. But of course, they always have to showcase the fact that they didn't know who was in possession of the cell phone. You never know, right? His cell phone was there, but was Anthony there? However, the most damning evidence was the forensic evidence. The DNA from Rachel's body and the cords that were used to constrain her. The DNA was from a single source, which was consistent with Anthony Pardon's DNA. DNA is interesting. I'm learning more and more about it. When they say it was consistent, it means it could be from a group of people, like Anthony Pardon himself with the Y chromosome. It could be a brother, his father, or his paternal grandfather. But what it also says is that it doesn't extend to a group of random men. So, if it wasn't Anthony Pardon, it would have had to be, like I said, his brother, father, or grandpa. None of those people were likely to be the person who did this to Rachel. Interestingly, the swab of Rachel's inner thigh and pelvic area brought back 2 male DNA profiles, but Anthony could not be excluded as the major contributor. Rachel's right wrist was swabbed, and there were 3 DNA profiles taken, but again, Anthony Pardon could not be excluded. For good measure, the curling iron cord, when tested, was also a mixture of 3 individuals, but at least 20.5 billion times more likely to be Rachel and Anthony than Rachel and some unknown person. The hairdryer had the same thing, 14.5 billion times more likely to have originated from Rachel and Anthony than Rachel and an unknown individual. DNA can be very confusing when presented like this because it makes you think, wait a minute, who's the other person? I always think, okay, the defense is going to jump on that so fast. Just to let you know, Anthony Slate had nothing to do with this. His DNA was never found on any of the swabs. Jonathan's DNA was found on a Pepsi can and the pipe that was taken from the apartment, but wasn't found on any of the items used to restrain Rachel. Her brother's DNA was found on a bathrobe in the upstairs bathroom, but on nothing else. Interestingly, her car did not have any evidence of Anthony Pardon's DNA. So Anthony was arrested, as I said, on February 9, 2018, in the Linden neighborhood by the SWAT team, and his bail was set at $5 million. Of course, he did not go anywhere. He was in there. He was indicted on February 15th by a grand jury on 9 counts, including aggravated burglary, aggravated robbery, forcible intercourse, and aggravated murder, just to name a few. Because he was a repeat offender and a registered offender, the death penalty was on the table. He pleaded not guilty on February 20th to all charges. While he was awaiting his trial, which was set for February 4th, 2020, in December 2019, he sent a handwritten letter to a news station claiming he didn't kill Rachel. He said he didn't kill anyone and that this case was only because of his past. He claimed he knew Rachel because they used to do drugs together, but investigators found no connection between Rachel and Anthony. In their point of view, these letters and other shenanigans, like him not wanting to go to his pretrial hearing and literally locking himself in a cell, holding on to the walls, were because he wanted to delay his trial. He was desperate not to have to pay for what he did. Then, on January 24th, 2020, right before he was supposed to go to trial, he did it again. He dismissed his attorneys, saying he wanted to represent himself. But by January 27th, just a few days later, after being asked a bunch of questions by the judge, he said, "Never mind, I don't want to represent myself." Finally, on January 27th, they started jury selection, and his trial began on February 4th, 2020. Some of the first people to testify were Rachel's friend, Jonathan Kennedy. After all, he was the one who discovered her body, and he gave a heartfelt and very sad recollection of what it was like finding his very good friend the way that he did. Everyone I already talked about was also at the trial. They heard from the officers, the agents, and all of Rachel's co-workers. Closing arguments were held on February 12th, and there was a timeline constructed. The prosecutor explained that after Anthony trespassed into Rachel's home, her place of safety, her place where she sleeps, where she eats, where she comes home to relax, he took her life. This is what they said happened. At some point, when Rachel was at Jonathan and Tina's getting her key, her door was unable to be locked. Remember, that is when Anthony entered Rachel's apartment. We know she talked to her mom around 6:30, and the receipt from Arby's showed that she was there around 7:34. So before 8 o'clock, Anthony was already in her apartment. She was in her living room eating. And it's unclear how long Anthony watched Rachel before he grabbed her, took her from the downstairs to the upstairs portion of the apartment, and tied her up. Then he forced her to tell him her debit card PIN. He proceeded to do everything else he did, including the blunt force trauma, the wounds, the asphyxiation, and placing her in her own bedroom closet, leaving her there. They also determined that he did take her car and her credit cards and debit cards, then proceeded to go to the bank, do all that shopping, put her car back in the parking lot, and go to his girlfriend's house. The defense came up with a story about how, yes, Anthony used Rachel's cards, but he didn't kill her. They claimed it was all speculation, and the DNA and cell phone evidence were not conclusive to prove Anthony's guilt. They also suggested that Jonathan Kennedy was involved, and it's true they did find a combination of DNA on some of the items, which is interesting to me. But in the prosecution's rebuttal, They argued that the defense was willing to admit the geolocation evidence showing that Anthony used the stolen cards, but they wanted to disregard that same evidence about where he was on the night of the murder. You can't have it both ways. The jury consisted of 4 men and 8 women. They deliberated for approximately 6 hours over a 2-day period and found Anthony guilty of all charges. He was eligible for the death penalty, and that sentencing phase began on February 18th. This is when the defense attorney tried to bring up all of Anthony's past and blame everything on his chaotic childhood, that he was in foster care, and it was his upbringing. They tried to blame this for why he was so dysfunctional and why he got into so much trouble. But the prosecution said everything this man did outweighed all of the things the defense was bringing up. He was 53 years old. The defense explained that Anthony was one of 6 siblings. He grew up in a rough environment. Anthony's mother forced him and his siblings to steal debit cards as children and taught them how to use them. His family never stayed in one place for very long. Whenever young Anthony got comfortable in a new neighborhood, they had to move again. As a child, Anthony witnessed and experienced his father's forceful behavior. His father beat him with golf clubs and pool cues, once breaking a stick over his back. Anthony struggled with behavioral issues, and things were not good for him at school. His 3rd-grade teacher and the principal tried to brainstorm ways to help him. An idea formed. A kindergarten teacher at the school allowed Anthony to become her little assistant. She gave him responsibilities like reading time and handing out supplies, and she said that Anthony was thriving under the teacher's trust and guidance. There was a notably positive change in Anthony's behavior. He started to show compassion and kindness to children. But sadly, this arrangement only lasted a couple of weeks because Anthony's mother was in prison at the time, and he was living with his grandparents. The problem was that the state wanted to reunite him with his biological parents. As a result, Anthony and his siblings were returned to his mother's care when she was released from prison. She took the family and forced them to move and change schools, and things only got worse. The defense went on to say that yes, he did go to prison, but he suffered physical altercations, and men forced themselves on him at the Southern Ohio Correctional Facility, which he called the worst prison in Ohio. This was the prison where there was an 11-day standoff between rioters and law enforcement back in April of 1993. The riot resulted in the deaths of correction officers and 9 inmates. This incident was one of the worst and most significant cases in prison history. The defense tried to bring all of this information, including a 9-hour interview between Anthony and a forensic investigator. During those 9 hours, the forensic psychologist attempted to understand Anthony's character. The psychologist received a 3,000-page document detailing Anthony's life just days before he was scheduled to testify. He didn't have enough time to review it thoroughly. He just said the system failed him, his mother failed him, the school system failed him, and the legal system failed him. According to the doctor, Anthony never received the treatment he should have received, especially after he was released from prison. Despite Anthony's supposed request for help, he never received it. Not having received the support he needed, Anthony developed a personality disorder. He only had a 3rd-grade reading level as an adult, and the forensic psychologist even suggested that he might have brain damage. However, the prosecution reminded the jury that these horrible circumstances of Anthony's childhood do not excuse the seriousness of his heinous crime. At the sentencing hearing, Anthony spoke on his own behalf. He began by discussing his family. According to him, he came from a family where prison and drugs were common, and because of his background, he was unable to secure a job. Next, he blamed the prison system, saying, "The prison system failed me, social services failed me, everybody." As he spoke to the court, Anthony never mentioned Rachel. He said he just made bad choices throughout his life, and he ended his testimony by stating that he respected the decision of the court and only wanted them to know his story. Rachel's father also spoke at the sentencing hearing and mentioned how Anthony frequently complained about the system failing him. In Rachel's father's opinion, the system failed Rachel and her family by not keeping Anthony under lock and key and letting him roam the streets. A day before Anthony murdered his daughter, the police gave him a ride home instead of arresting him. After ruling against the death penalty, the judge sentenced Anthony to life in prison without the possibility of parole for Rachel's murder. He also sentenced him to life without parole for forcible intercourse and 33 years for all the other charges. All three sentences were to be served consecutively, ensuring that Anthony would never see the light of day again. The Rachel Anderson Memorial Scholarship was established by the Cincinnati College of Mortuary Science in honor of Rachel's passion for the funeral industry. Over $10,000 were raised for the scholarship by Rachel's family, friends, co-workers, and many others who were touched by her story. Approximately $2,500 has already been awarded as of 2019, and all remaining funds will be awarded twice a year. Rachel's scholarship will be granted to students at CCMS who have the same passion for funeral services that Rachel did, a woman who dedicated her life to those who had passed, taken from this world much too soon. Imagine looking forward all year to a peaceful vacation. You're dreaming of savoring the gorgeous weather alongside your soulmate. What you don't anticipate is encountering pure evil and never making it back home. But in May of 2002, that's exactly what happened to one couple. This is their story. Before we begin, this story revolves around a very popular vacation destination. The location this time is Ocean City, Maryland. It looks like the perfect, fun-filled resort town with something for everyone, from miles of beautiful beaches to the iconic boardwalk. Swimming, sunbathing, building sandcastles on the beach, for many, it's the perfect little getaway party town. The boardwalk is lined with arcades, rides, and shops, and at night, it turns into bar-hopping territory. Here you'll find a variety of bars, including the Purple Moose Saloon and the Drunken Crab. These bars are known for their live music, dancing, and party atmosphere. But if you're looking for something a little more low-key, you can head to the downtown area. Here you'll find bars like the Tap House, the Irish Pub, and the Green Turtle. These bars offer a more relaxed atmosphere with pool tables, darts, and other games, plus good food. This area attracts so many people, 500,000 during the holiday and summertime. It's about 100 miles from Philadelphia, Baltimore, and Washington, so it draws in residents from a lot of different locations that aren't too far away, but it feels like you're in another world. In 2002, 4 lives would collide in this vacation beach town. 2 couples, hoping to get away from work and spend a fun-filled weekend in the sun, would become involved in one of the most horrific situations. But before I tell you how they met and found themselves in Ocean City, I want to go back in time to introduce you to each of them. Let's start with Erica Elaine Grace. She also had a nickname, Laney. She was born on February 3, 1978, in Roaring Spring, Pennsylvania. Her parents were Charlotte Grace, whom everyone called Cookie, and Gerald Mitchell Grace, who went by Mitch. Erica was the Graces' only child, and they gave her everything they could because they were well off. Mitch owned a contracting company, which afforded the family a very comfortable lifestyle. With only one child, they doted on Erica, giving her anything she wanted. She was their pride and joy, but with that pride came pressure because Mitch always expected excellence from her. She was expected to be an overachiever and to become something great. It was in junior high when Mitch discovered what that something was for his daughter: basketball. Erica was very athletic from a young age and had tried many sports, but she excelled at basketball. Once Mitch saw her potential, he knew he had to be deeply involved in her basketball career going forward to help mold her into a star athlete. You might say he was obsessed with her success. Mitch took pride in their family's work ethic. He said it was in their bloodline. He was a construction foreman at 20 years old, a superintendent at 21, and he started his own construction business at only 22. He expected Erica to carry the Grace family name with pride. Roaring Spring is a small town with only about 3,000 residents. In such a small town, there's only one elementary and middle school, and they're right next to one another. Spring Cove Middle School is where Erica got her start on the court, with her dad as the coach of her team. Sure, she was only a middle schooler, but Mitch had big plans for little Erica. And I say little, not just because of her age, She was also very tiny and skinny. She was petite, and because she didn't have height going for her, Mitch began honing in on Erica's skills as a point guard, which is often referred to as the heart of the team. However, this position is usually best for an aggressive player, someone who is able to strongly lead the entire team. The point guard is essentially the coach on the court, passing the ball to open players and pretty much calling all the shots. The thing is, Erica's personality off the court didn't match up to the one she had to portray on the court. Erica was shy. She could hardly speak unless she knew you. You would see her standing in a corner all by herself, but she knew well enough that on the court, she had to play her part, especially with Daddy watching. In real life, Erica was a goody-goody. She was always concerned with not getting in trouble, even making sure to call out other kids who weren't following the rules. This was most likely due to her upbringing. Her mother was very strict, and of course, Mitch had high expectations. It wasn't just in sports. Erica was expected to excel academically as well, and she did. She was always on the honor roll. Her home life consisted of being molded into pretty much the perfect child. She was pretty, she stood out, she was unique. She had very tight, ringlet-like curls that many girls her age envied, because this was the time when perms were very popular. Everybody wanted those perfect curls, and they came naturally for Erica, which made her stand out, in addition to her big blue eyes and bright smile. An all-American beauty with brains to match. People that knew Erica's mom, Cookie, described her as the typical trophy wife, a former nurse who now spent her time looking after Erica and the household. She enjoyed shopping and decorating the home, and Mitch absolutely adored Cookie. They had a bond that was unbreakable. As Erica grew up, she admired the love and devotion her parents had for one another. Not even she could come between them. If they had to choose, they would choose each other over anything or anyone else. Every time, Erica hoped that one day she would have a relationship like theirs. It was a fairy tale marriage, even though there were times when Erica said she felt like a third wheel, and she would express that to her friends. Mitch's dismissal of others caused a huge rift between him and the local basketball community. Erica was a starter on the varsity basketball team going into her freshman year at Central High School, something that was unheard of. This made Mitch appear as though he had somehow been able to influence this decision. But as Mitch fought for his daughter to get even more time on the court, he decided on a couple of things. One was to gather up the best of the best players and form an AAU pickup basketball team. These are amateur, competitive traveling teams, and this experience can be a valuable tool in gaining exposure to college coaches, which is what Mitch hoped for. The other decision he made was to move out of Roaring Spring and build a 2-story, 10-room, beautiful Tudor-style home in Hollidaysville, Pennsylvania. It had a big swimming pool in the backyard, but most importantly, a half-court indoor basketball court. Erica would refer to this home as the mansion, and it would be to most of us. Now, Erica could get private, professional coaching and practice even more because the court was inside her house. That's dedication to his daughter, or maybe living vicariously through her. Every night, Mitch would be on the balcony overlooking the court, watching Erica train. When she wasn't with her coach, he would spend hours passing the ball to her so that she could practice her three-point shots, which was her go-to move. Her high school coach, Joseph Hurd, said that she had a fierce outside jump shot. Where they were living, just the name Hollidaysburg says it all. It's called the best place to live in Pennsylvania. Another small town, the population has stayed under 6,000 for at least the last decade or so. Hollidaysburg is a historic town with a lot of charm. The reason many people want to live here is because the town is so close-knit. But the reason Mitch wanted to live here was probably because it's a small town where his daughter would be a very big fish. Just south, there's a bigger city called Altoona, where the population is much larger, about 50,000 people. So that's where all the businesses are, the restaurants, the popular hangouts. Speaking of hangouts, what about Erica's social life? Well, she was popular and well-liked growing up, mostly because of being a star athlete. She made some of her closest friends from the team she was on. One of those friends was Kristen Heinbaugh, who played on that same competitive team as Erica, and they got to know each other better than most. Erica wasn't into the things that other kids her age were getting into. Parties, boys, drinking. No. Erica's main focus was to make her daddy proud and get a full college basketball scholarship. That meant keeping her grades up. She would stay up all night, very late, after practice to make sure she finished all her homework. She would get annoyed by other classmates who seemed to half-ass their work because she was a perfectionist. This made her the target of bullies in high school. One time, someone broke into her locker and stole her papers when she didn't let them copy her homework. But Erica remained unfazed and didn't let it bring her down. She kept being kind-hearted, hard-working, and full of integrity. However, she did date. She had boyfriends, but nothing too serious. Besides, she already had a man by her side all the time, her dad. Mitch was always with Erica, especially on the court, cheering her on, pushing her to be her best. But there was one thing he couldn't coach Erica to become, and he couldn't pay for it either. She couldn't be taller. That was what was stopping her from getting where she wanted to be. Erica only ended up getting a partial basketball scholarship to the University of Mary Washington. I had never even heard of the school, so I was curious why she even applied there and if she applied anywhere else. It just didn't seem like the best place for her to put her name on the map. Division III is the lowest level of competition in the NCAA. Division III schools tend to have the smallest athletic department and budget. So why there? Maybe because Mitch was hoping that being at a smaller school would help her stand out. While it turns out Erica may have been a star on her small-town courts, when she was playing college ball, she was maybe a little above average. She was now a very small fish in a big pond, still talented but not exalted as this outstanding player that she once was as a teen. In the fall of 1995, Erica was also moving out of the house for the very first time, and to Virginia, over 3.5 hours away from her parents. She wasn't under their watchful eye, so instead of focusing so much on basketball, Erica was enjoying other things that college life had to offer. The same things she used to turn down in high school: boys, partying, and drinking. Those were high on her list of things to do besides going to the beach. She loved being tan. She prided herself on being very well put together. All that hard work being the best at everything growing up left her with another gift: perfectionism. But soon it became a curse. It evolved to become obsessive-compulsive in nature. Every hair had to be in place, every outfit spotless. This extended to her surroundings as well. Everything had to be organized. They all had their places, and they had to be in those places every time she put them back. If not, she would be overwhelmed with anxiety. So being organized helped her cope with her OCD. A routine for her was to place things in the exact spot every time. When she came home, she would have a designated place for, let's say, her purse. She knew it would be there, so she wouldn't have to spend even a second looking for anything, because not knowing where something was gave her an enormous amount of anxiety. Perfectionism is probably also why she didn't have a steady boyfriend. No one seemed good enough for Erica to bring home to her family. Remember, she had very high standards for a man. Her parents had the ideal marriage. It was a lot of pressure. But as luck would have it, she met someone who she thought would make the cut. He was a handsome guy that she met at a bar one night in Fredericksburg, near campus. It was the spring of 1998. Erica was 20 and a junior, going into her senior year of college. In her freshman year, she made All-American point guard, and during her first 2 years, she was ranked as one of the nation's leading three-point shooters in her division. However, by the fall of her junior year, Erica, a history major, decided to quit playing basketball. Instead, she wanted to focus on her studies. Of course, when Erica quit, her parents were very disappointed, and maybe that's an understatement. Her dad had devoted so many years to supporting her, and he was still trying his best even now. Her goal was to go to law school. Another goal was to possibly land a date with a handsome guy at the bar. His name was Benjamin Sifrit. It wasn't just his looks that Erica liked, it was who he was and all of his accomplishments. He was 20 like her, tan, blue-eyed, and drove a decked-out orange 1972 Chevelle with black racing stripes. He was athletic, he excelled in swimming, yet he felt he wasn't good enough to compete at a higher level despite winning numerous awards and accolades. Sound familiar? a perfectionist, maybe? Instead of chasing his swimming dreams, he joined the Navy. He was born in Iowa, but his family moved to Texas, and he attended Cypress Fairbanks High School. That's where he was a competitive swimmer. He worked at the YMCA, giving swimming lessons. He worked as a lifeguard at one point, a grocery store, and even at a locksmith. Benjamin, who went by BJ, was born a few months before Erica on October 21, 1977. The son of Elizabeth and Craig, BJ had a younger sister as well. By his senior year, the discipline of military life appealed to him. He wanted to be a Marine at first, but after his recruiting test, he scored so high that his recruiter encouraged him to become a Navy SEAL. Out of the 135 members of the amateur SEAL team, only 17 graduated, and BJ was at the top of his class. He was designated as Honor Man, which is very rare. Most times, an honor man won't even meet another honor man in their entire life at random. But BJ finished first out of his whole class, and he was the youngest Navy SEAL to receive the prestigious Honor Man title at the time. This training is considered to be the toughest in the world, pushing recruits to their limits both physically and mentally. On average, only 25% of candidates make it through what they refer to as Hell Week. It's a 16-mile per week running regimen, 2 miles a day for 3 days a week, and they have to do an 8-minute, 30-second pace. Week 4 increases this amount to 3 miles a day, and that's just running. After graduating from SEAL training, BJ was living in Virginia Beach. Erica was introduced to BJ, and right away she was smitten, very impressed with him. But he couldn't have cared less. There was only one thing on his mind, and it didn't include wasting his time on women. He was a SEAL. Well, Erica wasn't used to being rejected. She really wanted to see him again. She had actually just gone through a breakup, and it was really hard on her. There were times when she would just break down to her friends, even putting herself in physical harm because of the split. She didn't do well with rejection at all. It was sadly another aspect of her OCD. She had a really hard time dealing with abandonment. This may have also stemmed from her dad spending so much time on her. She expected nothing less from the men in her life that she called hers. BJ wasn't interested. However, as luck had it, later that year, in July, they bumped into each other again. Or maybe Erica planned it. BJ was at a SEAL party in Virginia Beach, and this time, she was doing all that she could to impress him, and it worked. They really clicked that night, and they remained in touch. Ultimately, they became officially boyfriend and girlfriend, spending every single day together. Erica knew that BJ was the one. Her parents always expected to plan this extravagant wedding when the right guy came around. She was a daddy's girl, after all, so Mitch planned on giving her a dream wedding. It was expected to be a large event filled with family and friends who loved Erica the most and would definitely want to be there to witness the matrimony. Erica knew just after a couple of weeks of being with BJ that she wanted to introduce him to her parents. The truth was, she and BJ might have been caught up in the honeymoon phase. They were already talking about getting married. However, Erica was keeping that very hush-hush. She didn't want to shock her parents too much with all of these sudden changes while she was still focusing on graduating from college. Cookie and Mitch were planning a little trip to New Jersey one weekend, and Erica thought this would be the perfect time to get everyone together. So she and BJ met them there. Erica was huge on documenting everything. Her camera was practically glued to her hand, like our phones are now. She loved scrapbooking. It had become more than a hobby for her. It was a lifestyle. Erica loved collecting things, and scrapbooking was perfect because it was like collecting moments in time to look at over and over again, reminiscing about the feelings and the things she experienced. She also loved collecting designer handbags and jewelry, diamonds in particular. Following in her mother Cookie's footsteps, she was the one that got her interested in all things sparkly from an early age. Cookie had entire glass cabinets with jewelry in them, like you would see at Zales, a jewelry store. Erica didn't deny it. She was materialistic. She told her friends, "I come from a wealthy family. I have rich parents, rich grandparents, and a rich aunt, so I was raised around it." It was normal to her. This trip was no exception when it came to documenting everything. She took tons of photos of her and BJ smiling happily and cuddling with one another. Eventually, she made an entire scrapbook dedicated to her new lover boy. Scrapbooking for Erica combined a few of her loves: collecting things, being creative, and traveling. Erica made it a point to explore. She loved traveling and making these scrapbooks for every place she went to visit, each one dedicated to a different destination. Just like other things in her life, this helped with anxiety. It was another way to channel her OCD by organizing her photos into books. BJ and Erica had a great time in New Jersey, but then they had to get back to reality. With BJ in Virginia Beach and Erica taking classes in Fredericksburg, they would be 2.5 hours apart, and it was too hard for them. Luckily, it was the summertime, so Erica relocated closer to where BJ lived. From there, it was a party every night. Being a SEAL meant BJ worked hard and played even harder. He had a reputation among his friends for out-drinking, outrunning, and outlasting them in anything he did. He was very competitive. One friend said BJ could go on a 2-day bender of drinking and partying and wake up the next morning, run a marathon with the Navy SEALs, and finish first. His tenacity and determination allowed him to excel in most situations, and those who knew him respected and admired him, especially Erica. BJ was the light of her life. Actually, her life revolved around BJ, and she wanted to keep him happy so that he wouldn't find someone else. Erica had a problem thinking that she was never good enough, most likely stemming from her upbringing. So even though she wasn't a party girl, she would be because she wanted to be by BJ's side, sometimes pulling all-nighters 7 days a week, running on little to no sleep. Even though having a serious relationship wasn't on BJ's list, when he and Erica got together, everything seemed way more exciting. She needed advice, so she turned to the first man in her life that she ever loved, her father. He would know what to do. She called him, letting him know that BJ was the one, the guy she wanted to spend the rest of her life with. He told her to essentially slow down, that being in love is very different than knowing someone well enough to like being with them. He suggested moving in together first to really get to know each other before leaping into such a serious commitment. But Erica said she was against that. She didn't believe in living with someone unless she was married. But being inseparable was really hard. BJ had to continue to relocate when he had different assignments. When you're a SEAL, you have confidential assignments. That meant that BJ couldn't tell Erica what he was doing or where he was doing it. With the next move looming over them, BJ apparently dared Erica to marry him one night, like, "I dare you to go to Vegas and marry me." They had only been dating for 3 weeks, and in the rush of excitement, Erica said yes. Within no time at all, they were jet-setting to the Silver Bell Wedding Chapel for their quickie nuptials. Officially husband and wife, Erica Grace became Erica Sifrit. They couldn't have been more in love or excited. Being his wife was thrilling. He was everything she dreamed of, and more. She brought him with her back home to Hollidaysburg soon after this, but they didn't tell her parents they were married. However, she did run into her high school friend Kristen, who used to play basketball with her, and she wouldn't stop beaming from ear to ear about her new man, bragging about being married on a dare after only knowing him for 3 weeks. Kristen was surprised. Sometimes you don't end up with the type of person that your friends imagined you would be dating when you were in high school. She was used to seeing Erica with the more nerdy, down-to-earth type. But tastes change, and so do people. It's been a while since high school. Kristen, of course, congratulated Erica, and Erica just kept flashing her wedding band in her face. She was shocked she wasn't invited to the wedding, and that's when Erica admitted that they had eloped. It just seemed really out of character for her. With 1 year left in school, Erica tried to busy herself while BJ was off on assignment after assignment. But it was hard. They were lovesick. BJ was homesick, and his dreams of being a Navy SEAL began to slide to the back burner, kind of how Erica's dreams had with her. But they both pressed on. From North Carolina, BJ was then sent to Arkansas in early 2000, and it was a lot for the newlyweds, especially because Erica had experienced BJ partying with his fellow SEALs. She was scared that he would be unfaithful when they were apart. They couldn't keep their hands off one another when they were together, so she began to get really anxious about what BJ was doing on his own. Any chance she got, Erica would meet up with BJ. This was very much against the rules, and they got caught. This was not good for BJ. He was cited for insubordination, the first of many times. The fact that Erica and BJ couldn't be apart was interfering with his being a SEAL, especially when he had to move to Alaska. Even though it was temporary, BJ had to depart for a 3-week cold weather training, and Erica had to take on the role of a single spouse. This time it was different, but he had to go. He was one of 6 men in the Naval Special Warfare Group detachment in Kodiak, Alaska. They were forbidden to even let anyone know where they were, but somehow Erica, I don't know, maybe he sent her a secret special message, because guess what? He was only gone 1 day, and she flew out to Alaska and met him at his doorstep. Of course, he let her stay in his room. Now, this was a risk for many reasons, but one of the biggest ones was because BJ was a field medic. In order to achieve this position, he had to take a 36-week-long program, plus continuing sessions every year. He also worked as an EMT in NYC and in an emergency room in Manhattan. He gained a lot of medical training. He knew how to manage casualties in combat situations. This meant BJ was in charge of medical devices and prescription drugs, ones like morphine, for example. Erica couldn't fly under the radar for long. They got caught, and it was a severe disregard for his role. He was swiftly reprimanded, but allowed to stay in the military. By August 18th, BJ decided to take a Chevelle for a spin right through the base and out the gate, speeding over 50 miles an hour. There were Marines manning that gate, and they were shocked because they could have been hit or even killed. This was beyond not being brotherly. It put people's lives in danger. When he got back, he was put in military jail, which is known as the Brig. His mom, Elizabeth, got the news, and she could not hold it together. She had so many hopes and dreams for her son, and now he seemed to be just throwing it away for some girl he hardly knew. But to be fair, many parents want to control their children, even when they become adults. As kids, you don't always know what path you want to go down, so you hold tight to the ones your parents carved for you, only to sometimes realize it's not the one for you. And then it's too late. Elizabeth flew out to be by her son's side with a lawyer in tow. After all that, he still acted out of line. The same month, after being released, he just walked off base. His staff sergeant was like, "Where are you going?" And he basically told him, "Fuck you," and he left anyway. This was against military law. You can't just leave whenever you want. When other officers tried to stop him, he told them to fuck off as well. He had a total disregard for what was once his dream. Ultimately, his military career ended when he was court-martialed. By October 2000, he was dishonorably discharged and then sentenced to 3 months in military prison. Now he and Erica would have to be away from each other for an even longer period of time. Erica was distraught. She, of course, went to her parents and told them everything. They were certainly shocked when they found out that BJ was Erica's husband. It's not what they expected from their nearly perfect daughter. But they understood she was an adult. She could choose who she wanted to be with, and they wanted to be supportive. It was a lot to take in. She had worked so hard to graduate at the top of her class, and after all of BJ's hard work, he had nothing to show for it. However, he and Erica were determined to live on their own terms. Erica finished college. She graduated cum laude with a degree in history. After BJ was released, Erica's father wanted the couple to have a restart. He understood both of their challenges, and he always wanted to be that supportive dad. He decided to give them a 3-week trip to South America, to Chile, a getaway where they could regroup, bond, grow together as a couple, but most importantly, come up with a plan. It is nice that Erica's dad could afford to do this for them, and they did some soul-searching together, along with a lot of memory-making. It inspired them to come up with a business idea, opening a scrapbook supply store together. They would have their own business, something they could build with one another and be proud of. They also opened up an eBay store where they would sell things that were getting a lot of traction back then, and they brought these ideas to Mitch. He agreed to finance the scrapbooking business for the young couple. They just had to find the perfect location. They looked in many different cities, but ultimately they decided to open their store in Altoona, Pennsylvania, very close to where Erica's family was. Reason 1, well, like I said, be close to home. But 2, Because they went around to all the other cities, there were already scrapbooking supply stores, but there wasn't one in Altoona. This meant they could kind of corner the market, so to speak, be this one-stop shop for all of your memory-making needs. It would be called Memory Lane, but they spelled it like Erica's middle name, Elaine, so E-L-A-I-N-E. Erica had a lot of experience. She knew what people were looking for. Mitch was able to land a contract for a space at this shopping plaza right here on the screen. Now it has a big lots as the main store, but here is where they opened their business. It opened in April of 2001. Erica and BJ moved into an apartment above a large garage in Altoona, where Mitch's company used to store their tools and equipment for contracting work. This was perfect. It was close to the scrapbook store, it was close to her parents, and they could live rent-free. So they were able to get a place of their own. That way, they didn't have to worry about finances, and they could focus on building their business. And it was a success. It wasn't long before the store was bringing in over 6 figures a year, and that was good for a new business. Erica and BJ were investing in merchandise and flipping it on eBay. I'm sure most of you know how it works, but back then, that was a big deal. You would go out, find something on sale, and then upsell it on eBay auctions. The more rare an item was, the more it would sell for. Erica stumbled upon the Golden Goose, Hooters apparel. It's true, the shirts that Hooters waitresses wear are not for purchase, and there are many that are considered rare. So of course they ended up being one of the best sellers on Erica and BJ's eBay store. Erica actually liked collecting them herself. That is where the Hooters obsession came into play for Erica, buying and trading tanks and shirts for her eBay store. They were really thriving at this point. They had a successful scrapbooking store, which was one of Erica's biggest loves of her life, besides her husband. They could work together as a couple, so they didn't have to be apart from one another. And they got to travel all over the country to visit different Hooters stores so they could get these coveted shirts to sell on their eBay store and then flip them for even more cash than they invested. And all of this helped fuel even more business opportunities for them. But I told you the story was about 2 couples coming together in a vacation town. The other couple has not been introduced yet, and that's where I'm about to go back in time again, this time to Iowa. On September 8th, 1969, almost a decade before Erica and BJ were born, Joshua Edward Ford came into this world. His parents, Doris and Alvin Ford, already had 2 children, Melissa and Mark. Initially, they were living in Cedar Rapids until Joshua graduated from Kennedy High School in 1989, and the family relocated to Boston. It was quite a culture shock for the family, but they were close-knit. They shared a deep love for one another and an appreciation for their new city. Though transplants to this new place, it didn't take long for Joshua and his siblings to feel like true Bostonians. Throughout their life, Joshua and his brother were immersed in martial arts and fitness because their dad opened a karate gym once they were established in Boston. They would be at this gym multiple times a week, practicing with their dad. It was a big part of their life. Mark was also very significant. He influenced his brother to be as successful as possible. When Alvin opened his karate gym, he designed the logo himself. He was so proud of it. It was a red dragon with a yin-yang character. Alvin was so proud that he actually had it tattooed on his body. And then when his son Mark and then Joshua got old enough, they also got their dad's logo tattooed on their arms. This was very significant to them. Joshua was devoted to showing how proud he was of his father's karate studio, and he also wore a ring with a dragon carved into it. This was a token that commemorated both the karate studio that Joshua loved and his tattoo. He never removed this ring. It reminded him of what a significant part it played in his life. Every time Joshua glanced at that ring, he was reminded of all the memories he had made with his father. Austin was the perfect place for Joshua to grow up. He was really into sports, and Boston has a very vibrant sports culture. Joshua and his brother definitely enjoyed sports like everyone else, but a bit to the extreme, which is normal from where they were from in Boston. The brothers loved going to games, from the local teams to the major teams. They were passionate about sports, and that's how they bonded together. Joshua would attend as many games as possible to show his support for his beloved Celtics, Red Sox, Bruins and Patriots, and the brothers would constantly be talking about the games, the scores, the players, everything. Growing up, Joshua had a longtime girlfriend that he met back in high school, and eventually the two got married in the early 90s. 6 years after graduating, Joshua and his wife gave birth to a baby boy that they named Zachary in 1994. Joshua's son was his world. It was like he was born to be this little boy's father. His world revolved around raising his son, dedicating time to teaching him, loving him, and being there for him as much as he could, which proved to be harder once Joshua decided that he and his wife were going to get a divorce. However, unlike some couples who despise their exes, this wasn't how Joshua and his ex-wife operated. Just because it didn't work out between them didn't mean that they didn't have love and respect for one another. They continued to be in each other's lives for their son, who was able to see both of them anytime he wanted. They had a very healthy co-parenting relationship. They were still a family as far as being loving towards one another was concerned, and making sure they were the best parents to their son. Joshua was determined to stay a significant part of his son's life. Zach grew up admiring his father immensely. They had a very close bond. Joshua was charismatic, he was loud, he was the life of the party, and people were drawn to him. The more they got to know him, the more they loved him. He was always trying to make people laugh and smile, and he would always lend a hand to those who needed it, even strangers. He did a lot for others, but he didn't have the desire to get too close to anyone in particular when it came to romantic relationships, especially after his divorce. He would date here and there, but he just wasn't interested in settling down. However, he was interested in getting to know new people and exploring different relationships. He just wouldn't stay with one woman too long. Commitment phobic, I guess, at the time, but that would change. It was 1999. Zachary was 5 years old. Joshua was working as a mortgage broker, and he was invited to a friend's Christmas party in Boston. That's where he met Martha Margene Crutchley, whom everyone called Jeannie. She was a beautiful blonde with bright blue eyes and a big smile. The two connected right away. One thing that was different about Jeannie was her age. She wasn't like the girls that Joshua was used to dating, considering she was 19 years and 1 week older than Joshua, born on September 1st, 1950, in Alexandria, Virginia. Joshua was 30 and Jeannie was 49 at the time, but it didn't deter them from getting to know one another. And it's a good thing, because they started to date, and Joshua's friends and family could see right away, even his son Zach, that he had never been happier. They connected like they were soulmates. They didn't connect like this with anyone they had met before. Jeannie was also so great with Joshua's son. Zach liked her a lot. He saw how happy she made his father. Jeannie was one of the nicest people. She was generous, kind, and perfect for his dad, and that's a big deal for a single parent. They hope their children like their partner and vice versa, because it's usually a deal breaker if your partner doesn't like your kid or your kid doesn't like your partner. Children can be the best judges of character. Sometimes it's like they have an ability to see past people's superficial charm and the things that adults can sometimes overlook. But Jeannie was perfect for Joshua. She was an intelligent, hard-working insurance executive who had been in the business for a very long time, and she was very serious about her job. Joshua was too. They made a great match. They were self-described workaholics, but they also liked to kick back and have some fun. They were serious about one another and their future. So when Joshua was offered a promotion that required him to move to Virginia, they didn't hesitate to take the opportunity. In April 2001, they moved to Fairfax, Virginia, just outside Washington, D.C. Zach was sad because his dad was going to be over 7 hours away, and he was excited that his father would be close to such a historically significant part of the country. He could not wait to explore with him. Joshua made it a point to spend the summers and holidays with his son. The summer of 2001 was so much fun. They went sightseeing, and they went to baseball games. Zach was so happy. They had a blast. And Joshua made sure he gave him a lot of attention because he knew that they would be apart after the summer. But before the summer was over, tragedy struck the Ford family. Joshua's older brother Mark called with some very concerning news. Mark's 23-year-old daughter, Kelly Ford, was missing. Sadly, Kelly had been battling substance abuse. She was living in a project called COPE, a residential program providing substance abuse rehabilitation services to women. Kelly was a mom to a 4-year-old little girl named Summer. So despite her difficulties, she was determined to improve so that she could be part of her daughter's life. She worked hard to overcome her addiction. Her disappearance was heartbreaking for the entire family, especially her uncle Joshua. They were very close. Kelly was last seen at 1:30 p.m. on August 15, 2001. She had just passed a drug test and was on her way to a job interview. But apparently at 8:15 p.m. that evening, her mother Debbie received a phone call from COPE that Kelly had not returned from her job interview. Debbie was told it wasn't uncommon for people in recovery to run away, but she knew her daughter would never do that, even on her worst days, substance abuse or not. Debbie was worried. She was confused. She had no idea what could have happened to her daughter. She even hoped and prayed that Kelly would be found and that maybe she just had a relapse. She was praying for that because at least it meant her daughter was alive. Well, the search was on, and of course, the entire family was on edge, keeping up with every little detail in the case. There was nothing for weeks. No one could locate Kelly. This was Joshua's niece, and it took a toll on everyone. 2 months later, they got even more devastating news. 2 men were playing frisbee on Cape Cod, and they noticed something in the sand. It looked like a bone. They quickly jumped up, called the police, and a forensic pathologist came out there to observe. It was determined to be the body of a young woman. It looked as though this was a makeshift grave on the top of a small dune. Upon further examination, the pathologist determined the female died of homicidal violence. However, they could not identify who this woman was and needed to find out. They called nearly 100 police departments around Cape Cod, looking to see if there were any missing women who matched the description of their Jane Doe, but there were not. Unfortunately, the investigation ultimately led to the identification of Kelly Ford on October 30th, 2001. A police detective on Cape Cod called Debbie for a description of one of Kelly's tattoos, a Chinese character for love. Based on this description, the detective traveled from Cape Cod to Boston, where dental records reviewed by a medical examiner and jewelry that was recognized by her family positively identified her as 23-year-old mom, Kelly Ford. She had been murdered. It was unbelievable, and the killer was still out there. This was a gruesome murder. Her heart had been ripped from her chest, her head was missing, and they had no suspects. They thought this was probably a serial killer. So, by the spring of 2002, the case was still unsolved. The family had yet to experience any closure, and after such a tumultuous year of 2001, Jeannie and Joshua wanted to just give themselves a break. In May of 2002, Memorial Day was coming up. They knew they would have a longer weekend and a day off work, so they booked a room at the Atlantis condominiums in Ocean City, Maryland, for a quick little weekend getaway. They'd spend some time relaxing, and then they would be back home to work by Tuesday the 28th. They had to be, because Jeannie had a big meeting scheduled at 10 a.m. that day. So they would drive out Friday after work on the 24th, hang out until Monday night on the 27th, when the traffic died down, and then make the 3-hour trip back to Virginia. Also 3 hours away, BJ and Erica out in Altoona, Pennsylvania, where they were now living and working at their store, saw a fun opportunity to go on vacation for Memorial Day. Mitch wanted to treat them to something special for 2 reasons. One, for working as hard as they were. He was aware that they would be there all night and all day. Sometimes he would see BJ sleeping while they were stocking and cleaning the store. It was a lot, so he thought they could use a break. But the second reason was that they never got to go on a honeymoon. Mitch had a friend who owned a condo in Ocean City. Mitch's construction company had actually done some renovation work on it, so whenever he or his family wanted to get away, all they had to do was ask. So Mitch booked the couple a suite for a week at the Rainbow Condominiums in Ocean City. He, Key, and Cookie agreed to take care of the scrapbook store while the couple was away. In the 1970s, Ocean City had earned a reputation as a popular beach town with something for everyone. It was great for families, couples, and singles. There was plenty to do, from beach activities to boardwalk attractions. The locals and tourists of Ocean City loved it. They felt safe. I mean, there were occasional noise violations and disorderly conduct going on there, but for the most part, it was a great town. It was well maintained and a fun place to spend a day or weekend, especially on a holiday weekend like this. This area has a stretch of beach for 30 miles, a 3-mile boardwalk, and most people who come here that really want to experience everything the city has to offer would stay in a hotel or a condo on the beach. But on the other side is the bay, and both of them have awesome views. A lot of restaurants are actually on the bay side, just across Coastal Highway, but the boardwalk is on the beach side, so a lot of people prefer that side. Well, Joshua and Jeannie picked this condo right here at the Atlantis, and it was great. Located right on the beach, it's got a pool, it's close to all the restaurants and bars, and the room was more than what you would get in a hotel because it would accommodate a longer stay with a full kitchen, laundry, a living room, and a nice oceanside patio balcony. Now just a 4-minute drive away and a 6-minute walk, that was where BJ and Erica were staying at the Rainbow Condominiums. I have to say, this condo is definitely a step up. It's a little more luxurious because of course Mitch was able to get this for his daughter and his son-in-law because he knew the guy. It was on the 11th floor penthouse suite, 2 stories, beachside, with a big pool, a balcony patio a little bit more private, and a jacuzzi tub in the bathroom. Really nice place for a little getaway. And there's also a Hooters there. So of course, BJ and Erica were planning on getting some exclusive merchandise and maybe trading some tanks from other locations so they can go back home and flip them on eBay. Erica grabbed a bunch of Hooter tanks that she already had on hand because she was hoping to get one from Ocean City since she didn't have one of those in her collection yet. So now you know that both couples are here in Ocean City. Joshua and Jeannie arrived on Friday, and BJ and Erica came Saturday, May 25th. Erica had just gotten her nails done that day, and by noon, they set off in their Jeep Cherokee. They stopped to get some beer and snacks before heading up to their penthouse suite 1101. Erica was eager to make her way down to Hooters. That was their first stop. They ordered a couple of pitchers of beer and had some of their famous hot wings. Erica did her typical routine. She was being nice to the waiter and then revealed that she had some shirts to trade. They also took a ton of pictures for Erica's scrapbook. They were having a lot of fun. Erica ends up asking the waitress where's the best place to go to hang out around here for drinks and dancing. The waitress was like, "Hands down, it's Secrets." Now this place is spelled S-E-A-C-R-E-T-S, like the sea, and it is the most popular destination in Ocean City. However, it's a 21-minute drive or over an hour walk. This beach is long, but Ocean City had set up a bus system and the locals and tourists referred to it as the drunk bus. It operated from 6 a.m. to 2 a.m. and then on demand from 2 a.m. to 6 a.m. It would come by every 20 minutes at various stops on this trip, and there was a stop right in front of BJ and Erica's condo. It was perfect. It takes you to the most popular destinations and is only a couple of bucks, so it's cost-effective and safe for people who are out there drinking and don't want to drive. They decided to head back to their condo and then get ready for a night out. Meanwhile, Joshua and Jeannie had jumped into Jeannie's maroon Acura and made their drive to Ocean City. The first stop they made was to a grocery store in town. They wanted to fill their kitchen, stock up on snacks and food so that they could cook, and they didn't have to spend all their money on eating. They could indulge in other things that weekend, like the liquid diet perhaps. I mean, they were on vacation, they could do that. So they came back, unloaded the groceries, and then laid over the first night because they worked all day and had this long drive. But there was a Celtics game the next night on Saturday, so they planned on going to get some food and drinks at a sports bar and watch the game, then make their way out for some drinks and fun at a bar. 4 days later, on Tuesday, May 28th, the Fairfax Police Department gets a call from a worried co-worker of Jeannie's. She said she never showed up for that meeting that morning, and there were 25 people waiting on her. It was extremely out of character. Even when Jeannie was away, she was working. She was on top of it. She was on her computer making calls and even checking in with her employees. She never missed a meeting in over 20 years. But then the communication just stopped, and now she was nowhere to be found. They had already made contact with Jeannie and Joshua's family and friends to see if anyone had heard from them. Joshua was also missing from work on Tuesday, and Joshua's brother Mark said the last time he spoke to his brother was the evening of Saturday, May 25th. Joshua had called Mark after the Celtics game. Mark recalled it being really loud in the background, as though Joshua was out at a bar, and you couldn't hear him very well. So they exchanged some small talk about the game and how excited they were that the Celtics beat the Nets by 4 points. Mark asked Joshua how he and Jeannie were doing at the beach, and he said that they were having a great time. But Mark let him know, "Hey, I just completed an exhausting 12-hour shift. I'm tired. I gotta go. Call me tomorrow." That was the last time they connected. Mark just figured Joshua was enjoying his vacation, and he didn't want to bother him. No one had heard from Jeannie since that day either. She had checked in with her colleagues on Saturday here and there, but after that, it was silence. She wasn't returning anyone's calls, emails, nothing. Well, these were adults. If they chose not to keep in contact on vacation, so be it. It was up to them. So this wasn't a full-blown investigation yet, but after they didn't show up for 48 hours, Fairfax police decided to reach out to Ocean City Police Department on the morning of Wednesday, May 29th. As Fairfax Detective Mike Boone spoke with Ocean City officers, he asked if there were any missing people from Virginia that had been reported. After looking over files, he discovered there were not. Detective Boone let the OCPD know that a Virginia couple, 51-year-old Martha Crutchley and her 32-year-old boyfriend, Joshua Ford, had been staying at the Atlantis condominiums, and he provided the unit number. Before he hung up, he mentioned that Martha went by Jeannie, and he provided a description of her vehicle, a maroon Acura with a special custom license plate with her name on it. It just said G-E-N-E-Y, Jeannie. This would make it easier to spot among all the vehicles in Ocean City. Detective Scott Bernal was briefed on what was going on. He was actually just getting off from a graveyard shift that morning, but knowing that there was a couple missing at his beach town, he wanted to be part of the search right then and there. However, his supervisor ordered him to go home. They didn't have the budget to support his overtime. He told them he could pick up on the details at his next shift, but for the first time in his career, Detective Bernal disobeyed orders. There was just something that pulled him to start looking right then and there. He said it was a gut feeling. Now, since it was after Memorial Day, the crowds had died down to almost nothing. People had all headed back home. The front parking lot to the Atlantis condominiums was entirely empty, except in the far corner, where Bernal spotted a maroon Acura. He knew right away this was the car he was looking for, and you could tell it had been there for a while. There were leaves, sand, and debris under the tires, and dust all over it. He walked to the rear of the vehicle and confirmed that it was Jeannie's by the license plate. Now it was time to make his way up to the room and see if they had perhaps just decided to stay a little longer than expected, extending their vacation a few more days to have some fun in the sun. Detective Bernal was accompanied by OCPD officer Brian Brown, and they didn't even need to search for a warrant because, at this point, they were conducting more of a welfare check. A manager let them inside the unit, and right away, Bernal had a gut instinct that told him something wasn't right. First off, Joshua and Jeannie weren't inside. Secondly, it was like everything was frozen in time, as though they had just disappeared. Joshua and Jeannie's personal belongings were everywhere. One may assume they truly did just decide to stay longer. After all, these were not hotels. They were independently owned condos, so they didn't keep records of guests. That was up to the owner of each individual unit. It's kind of like an Airbnb. And considering this was now off-season, the owners would have most likely trusted that their vacation guests had left. And unless the unit was booked again soon, they probably wouldn't have housekeepers going in to clean. It had only been a couple of days at this point. They were doing a walkthrough in the kitchen. There were open potato chip bags on the kitchen counter, next to a grocery bag and an empty cooler that looked like it hadn't even been used yet. There were also a few wine bottles, some of them open, a couple of knives on a glass cutting board, a cigar cutter, a half-empty glass of wine sitting on the sink, and then there was another one inside the sink. That one was empty, along with a coffee cup and a couple of plates, a Tupperware container, and a few forks and knives. It looked as though they were just waiting to clean them, like Joshua and Jeannie had had a quick bite to eat, hung out, had a glass of wine or two, left, and figured they would just clean up later. There was an empty wine bottle in the trash, along with a chip bag and some paper towels. A receipt on the counter showed all of the groceries that were purchased, and it was dated for Friday, May 24th. Bernal looked in the fridge and in the cabinets, and he took note that most, if not all, of the items were still there. They hadn't been eaten. Bernal made his way to the dining area. You can see there's a table just past the kitchen. The chairs didn't even look like they had been pulled out and sat in. There were items on top of the table, so they quickly scanned that area. On the table, there was an open camera bag with a camera next to it, a CD holder that was open and unzipped just lying on the table. You can see some of the CDs inside. Next to the camera bag was a black sun visor, and in front of that was a Patriots ball cap. These items being there indicated to Bernal that the couple had most likely taken them off after being out during the day when they came back to the room. There was also an empty cup and what appeared to be a stack of work papers, folders, and a laptop computer at the end of this table. Moving into the living room area now, they see a black bag next to one of the chairs, and there's a snack bowl with some popcorn still left in it on the coffee table. This was in front of the couch, and there were also 2 wine glasses. They were half empty, with some playing cards and 2 stacks, as though 2 people were playing just before they left. There was a pair of men's loafers. They were untied, lying next to the couch in the living room, and an ashtray with a cigar and cigarette and a little bit of weed in there too. Moving on, they went to the outside balcony patio. There were a few chairs, a table, another snack bowl, an empty wine glass, an empty cup, and a few tubes and bottles of sunscreen, along with a fly swatter. Okay, on to the bedroom. The bed looked a little disheveled. The comforter was no longer on the top. The sheet was kind of hanging off like it had been pulled that way. You could kind of see the box spring underneath. The pillows seemed to be used. There was a head impression still on the top of one of them that was leaning on another one underneath, and there was a third pillow in the middle of the bed. Several magazines were at the side of the bed on the floor next to the side table, and there was an empty glass on that side table. A purse was located on top of the bed, along with a wallet. As Bernal appeared inside the open purse, right away he saw Martha's work badge with her name and picture on it. There's a pen laying nearby, a wallet that contained a number of credit cards, debit cards, paying cards, calling cards, and an ID with Martha's name on it from George Mason University. Inside the purse, they found a receipt dated the night of Saturday, May 25th at 9:25 p.m. from the Green Turtle. It was for 2 draft beers, a soda, 1 8-ounce New York strip, 1 bowl of crab soup, and a large shrimp dinner, totaling $49.23. The closet had men's and women's clothing still hanging inside, but it appeared that 2 of the empty hangers may have had clothing on them before being taken off and worn, since those 2 hangers were in the middle of ones with items on them. Next to the foot of the bed was what appeared to be a bath mat, which was kind of odd. Near the window was a window blind. It had either fallen down or been taken off. You can see it right here, laying on the floor. In the bathroom, they found all of the couple's toiletries scattered on the bathroom counter. Toothpaste, a hairbrush, a men's razor, foundation, a comb, a couple of toothbrushes, and a blow dryer among all kinds of normal everyday items. Clearly, Joshua and Jeannie had planned to come back to the room. Now, something I picked up on, and maybe you did too, it seems like there are a lot of wine glasses and cups, considering that only Joshua and Jeannie were renting this room. I counted at least 4 wine glasses at all different levels of wine. Of course, they could have had several drinks, but usually you just refill your glass, not dirty another one. Bernal noticed this too, and it led him to believe that they may have had company over, and they were taken, or something worse. They immediately called the station and wanted to designate this room as an official crime scene. With only 2 receipts located in the room, one dated the 24th and the other the 25th, it appeared as though the couple hadn't been back after that date. They had Jeannie's car towed for analysis and to keep it in a secure place. When Bernal got back to his office, he made calls to all the local police departments, as well as ones in neighboring states of New Jersey, Pennsylvania, and Delaware. He was checking to see if anyone had been reported missing or if they were incarcerated. He also checked if there were any Jane or John Does that had been picked up, and none had. No Joshua and no Jeannie. Detective Bernal realized that because this is a vacation town, many people who were there when Joshua and Jeannie arrived were most likely already gone. So he was trying to work fast to get flyers printed out and passed out everywhere, up and down the boardwalk, at all the different bars and restaurants. They were hoping that someone may recognize them. They also wanted to head over to the Green Turtle Bar and see if any of the servers remembered seeing this missing couple. Here's what the flyers looked like. They had both of their pictures on it, their height, weight, eye color, hair color, as well as a brief description of when they were last seen or spoken to. Bernal also checked their credit cards and bank records, as well as their cell phone records. There was no activity past Saturday night on the 25th. But so many people come here to do activities like boating and hiking, and they didn't know if somehow they went away on an excursion and got hurt. They could be anywhere. Bernal wanted to know if any emergency calls had come in on Saturday night, or maybe any time that weekend. He wanted a log of all of those 911 calls. That's when he was informed that one came in at 3:01 on Sunday morning, followed by an additional one not too long afterward. That call had ended abruptly. It was disconnected. So of course Bernal wants all the information on this call. He gets a transcript, and then he requests the audio. I'm just going to tell you what the audio revealed. So the operator had picked up and said, "Ocean City Police." The voice on the other end was that of a woman. She was speaking loudly. She was saying hello, and the officer replied, "Yes." That's when she heard some kind of clicking, and then the operator said, "Hello, hello, Ocean City Police." The woman on the other line said yes. Again confused, the operator said, "Ma'am, did you want the police?" She's now frustrated, wondering what this woman wants. She's not spitting it out, and she says, "Yes, I do." The operator started to ask where she wanted the police, but the woman interrupted her. She said, "Yes, I did, but I think someone is on the line right now listening." Then there was a pause. The woman did not sound very coherent, and they get a lot of drunk calls in this area. It didn't sound like there was an actual emergency going on at the time. The operator just kept saying, "Hello," and there was silence. Then all of a sudden, the woman said, "Do you have a direct line I can call you back at?" The 911 operator said, "Yeah," and she gave the woman a number to call. The woman said, "Okay, thanks," and she hung up. She didn't call the direct line, but about an hour or so later, another 911 call comes in, similar in nature. The operator picks up and says, "911, what's your emergency?" The woman is now whispering. She's like, "Yes, I have an emergency at my apartment," still sounding a little incoherent. The operator said, "What kind of emergency do you have?" The woman said, "There are people in my house that I don't know, and my purse is suddenly missing. I think I'm going to have a robbery here." Then she said, "There's an emergency here. Send somebody fast." The operator was trying to confirm by saying, "Okay, there are people in your apartment at this time." The woman repeated, "Yes." The operator told her that she was going to connect her with the police and to stay on the line, but then the woman said, "Hey," and interrupted her again. The operator said, "What?" And the woman said, "I'm in an upstairs bedroom. They don't know where I am." The operator told her, "Okay, I'm going to connect you to the police. You can tell them everything." There was a moment of silence, and then an officer came on the line. The woman said, "Hi," but then, as she began that sentence, the line just went dead. Detective Bernal is concerned. This was a woman saying that she was in trouble. She sounded intoxicated in the middle of the night and was apparently hiding from intruders. However, no officers were sent out there. For one, they didn't get a location from the woman. And while it may seem normal to trace calls, that's not exactly how these things happen. So, nothing came out of this call except concern. Now, days later, Bernal is trying to piece together what happened to Joshua and Jeannie. Could this have been Jeannie? Well, back home in Boston, Joshua's friends and family and ex-wife were worried sick. Joshua had not contacted Zach in days. He never went this long without calling him. With what happened to Joshua's niece Kelly, being murdered and dismembered on a beach in Cape Cod, this whole situation seemed unreal. It brought back so many horrible memories and feelings from when Kelly was first reported missing, and they knew what the outcome was. The killer was still not found. Joshua's ex-wife was filled with worry and fear. She knew she was going to have to tell her son the news. She dreaded the conversation. She didn't know how it was going to impact him. When Zach came home from school that day, he noticed his mom and his stepdad crying at the kitchen table. His mom told him that his father had gone missing. Zach was only 8 years old. He was filled with confusion and fear. He didn't understand what was happening. It was so hard for a child to understand. He believed that his father was going to be okay. He just wanted to know, when am I going to see him again? His young mind could not comprehend the gravity of the situation. All he wanted was to be reunited with his father, and everyone was hoping that would happen soon. But it wasn't looking good. It was Thursday, May 30th. Almost a week had passed since Joshua and Jeannie set off on their getaway. Bernal and colleagues were heading out to the Green Turtle. The day manager told them they would need to speak to the night manager and the night staff because the couple was there at 9:25 p.m. on Saturday. However, they did have surveillance, and sure enough, it captured the couple. Nothing seemed out of the ordinary at all. They were just enjoying some food and some beer, watching the Celtics game. So the investigators had to wait to speak with the night staff. Meanwhile, Bernal was informed of the gruesome murder of Joshua's niece, Kelly. Something seemed off. The connection was to two beach towns. They didn't know much about Joshua at this point, so they had to run every theory in their minds. They began to think that maybe Joshua had something to do with this. Just a summer before, his niece goes missing, and she's found dead. He's dating this much older woman. Was there a chance he was after her money, or did he just snap? I mean, they looked happy, but we all know looks don't mean much. Or could Jeannie be the culprit? Could she be conning this young guy somehow? Could there have been an accident of some kind? They had to look into everything, and one of those things was also Jeannie's ex-husband. He had been calling non-stop, asking all kinds of questions, and though it seemed helpful, it also seemed suspicious. They looked into him too, and at least they were able to rule him out as a suspect so they could move on in their search. The Criminal Investigation Division of the OCPD was working the case. They still had no leads. They went back to the Green Turtle when the night staff was there and asked around once again. Finally, one of the servers said she remembered the couple. She explained that they stood out because they were so polite. The server remembered them eating but could not say where they went or what they did after they paid their bill. As the detectives were canvassing the area around the Green Turtle, which was their one and only lead at this point, they noticed a bus stop. That was the drunk bus. They thought that maybe Joshua and Jeannie may have hopped on this bus after dinner, since they knew their car was in the same spot and hadn't moved back at the condo. After an extensive search of the transit logs for the evening of May 25th, detectives eventually located the bus driver, and he confirmed that he remembered the couple taking his bus that night. The bus driver echoed what the server had said. He remembered them because they were incredibly friendly and kind. They got on the bus near a stop at the Atlantis condos and sat in the front. They rode the bus for a few stops, and then he recalled they pulled up to another condo. A couple boarded the bus. They attempted to pay with a $20 bill, and the driver said, "Exact change only, sorry." The couple realized they did not have exact change, and unfortunately, the driver can't take anything but exact change because he can't give anything back. So the couple was looking around in his pocket and her purse while the other passengers who were already intoxicated were annoyed because these people were holding up the bus. Finally, the guy said, "I have a 5. And again, the driver said, "Exact change only." So the dude was waving the $5 bill and asking if anyone on the bus had change. Joshua spoke up. He asked the couple where they were headed, and they said, "Secrets." Joshua and Jeannie were too, so he stepped up and took care of the couple's fare. The guy looked at Joshua and said, "Thanks, man. I'll get you and your girl a drink when we get to the bar." That's all the driver remembered. He dropped a bunch of passengers off right in front of Secrets at night, and that was all he knew. This was good. It meant that detectives had another location that they could search and interview staff. So that's what they did. Staff members said they recalled seeing Jeannie and Joshua. They were with a few other people, including another couple, and they were hanging out. They were outside in line for about an hour, and then they made their way inside where they had drinks. No one had any idea what time they left or if anything out of the ordinary happened. But in just a few hours, they were going to get their biggest lead yet. After midnight on May 31st, OCPD officer Jason Hart got dispatched to a Hooters nearby. Apparently, a silent alarm had gone off, and he and his partner, Officer Freddie Howard, drove out to find out what was going on. It was after closing time on a Thursday night, now into the early morning on Friday. When they pulled up, they saw a bunch of merchandise sitting outside on benches right outside the restaurant near the entrance of their gift shop. It appeared they had pulled up in the middle of a robbery. They saw a man and a woman bringing clothing items out of the store. The man stopped, put his hands up in the air and said, "Okay, we stole it, but can we just put it all back?" Without responding at all, Howard grabbed the man's arms, put him in handcuffs, and then he started frisking him. He found a gun in his waistband, and it was loaded. He was also strapped, but there were no weapons inside the holster, just a couple of clips. Howard made the guy sit down on the curb, and then he went to the woman, who at this point was having some sort of medical emergency. She couldn't breathe and was sitting there with her hands above her head, gasping for breath. Howard grabbed hold of her and felt around to make sure she wasn't armed. That's when he found a knife, a type with a clip on the pocket or inside your waistband, so you can put it somewhere while it was clipped in place right in her waistband. Then he found a gun in the back of her waistband. It was actually shoved far down enough that it was hidden between her buttocks. She repeated with the man that they asked if they could just go and put all the stuff back. What? That is not how this works. Howard had her sit against a wall, and he could see she was having a really hard time keeping it together. She kept saying, "Officer, I need help. I need my medicine, please." When the officer has someone in their custody, they are responsible for what happens to them. Without medics on scene at the moment, he was doing all he could to try to remedy what looked like some kind of minor medical issue. So she instructed him to please go to her vehicle and get her purse. Her medications were inside. Howard told her to try to stay calm and went to look for her meds. I have to say, some officers have so much patience. As Howard made his way over there, he finds the woman's bag. He looks inside. He's looking for medicine, but he sees a wallet. He figures while he's at it, he's going to find out who this woman is. He opens it up and finds 2 driver's licenses inside, a man and a woman. He hands them over to the other officer. They run the names and realize there's a missing persons alert out for them. It's Martha Crutchley and Joshua Ford. They just stumbled upon these 2 supposedly missing people in the middle of robbing a store. They also had social security cards for the couple and a fitness club membership with Jeannie's photo on it. They look at the vehicle. There's black tape on the license plate. Maybe they really don't want to be found. As he analyzes the information on the report, he realizes the missing woman is 51 years old, and the person he's staring at, sitting against the wall, doesn't look a day over 30. So something is not adding up. Detective Bernal is called to the scene, obviously because this is his case. He immediately walks up to the woman in custody, reads her Miranda warnings, and then asks her, "How do you know Martha Crutchley and Joshua Ford?" She tells Bernal she has no idea what he's talking about. He further explains what he's referring to, the 2 IDs that were in your bag. Still, the woman just sits there like a deer in the headlights. Bernal shows her the missing persons flyer. She says she's never seen those people before. She doesn't have a clue how their IDs would end up in her bag because she knows she didn't put them there. But there's something else in her bag, something that concerns the officers even more than finding the IDs: spent shell casings. The woman explains she's just now learning how to use her new gun. Her husband had been showing her, and she kept the shell casings as a memory of the first time shooting. I don't know. There was a 3rd handgun found inside their vehicle in the center console. What in the world is going on here? What is their connection to the missing couple? Underneath the gun, detectives find a lock-picking kit as well as masks and gloves. They keep searching and find flex cuffs. These are like zip ties that are pre-formed into handcuffs. They take the tape off the license plate, run it in their system, and it doesn't take long before they know both names of the couple they have in custody. It's none other than 24-year-old newlyweds Erica and BJ Sifritz. What are they doing? They're not broke. Why would they be stealing from Hooters? You and I both know why. This was ideal for them. What's better than bribing waitresses to give you rare items and one-of-a-kind memorabilia? Stealing it, of course. They had clearly come prepared. Look at everything they removed already. There was a ton of hats. They even took a cigarette display with a bunch of packs of cigarettes. There were backpacks, sweatshirts, and Hooters vanity license plates. They put Erica and BJ in separate cop cars and bring them down to the OCPD for questioning. Meanwhile, they're rifling through the couple's Jeep, and that's when Bernal takes note of a parking pass in the front window. It's for the Rainbow condominiums. He thinks, oh my God, with all the items we just found, maybe Erica and BJ have held this couple hostage. So they immediately head over there, hoping that it's not too late and that they haven't been harmed, considering Erica has spent shell casings in her possessions, guns and knives. They have no idea what they're going to find. Bernal is able to get confirmation that Erica and BJ are indeed staying at the Rainbow condominiums and have been since Saturday the 25th, the same night that Joshua and Jeannie had last been seen. Bernal calls to get medical assistance to the scene in case they stumble upon the couple in distress. At first, the property manager would not allow Bernal inside without a search warrant. Understandable, but he explains the evidence they found in BJ and Erica's possession and that they have reason to believe Joshua and Jeannie are in danger, so they're allowed to enter under exigent circumstances. The penthouse suite is 2 stories. There's an upper and lower level. They make their way inside and nothing seems amiss. Detectives and officers spread out, looking for people who are alive. The fact that there were plastic handcuffs and masks in the Jeep led them to believe there was some kind of hostage situation going on. So they go room by room and aren't seeing any signs of Joshua and Jeannie. Since they don't have a full search warrant, they can't search anything. They can only look with their eyes. Here's what they observe. A very organized living room. Remember, we're talking about Erica here. She's got OCD. She likes things in a particular order, so everything looks normal. There's a paper towel roll on the coffee table in the living room. That's probably the only thing out of place. Then there are some items on a table behind the couch. It looks like a cologne bottle, some keys, and a pen. Nothing really stood out. They make their way up to the upstairs bedroom. The bed is completely made. Everything looks put away. They look out on the balcony. There's nothing there. There is an attached bathroom, so they peek inside and it looks clean. They step in, see the jacuzzi tub, and then spot their first clue that something may not be right. But is it a clue? A woman that has severe OCD, cleaning supplies right outside the bathroom door, paper towels. It looks like it could have been a 6-pack. There are 2 missing, and we know there's 1 downstairs, so maybe that's not too much of a concern. There are garbage bags, Clorox bleach, and a bunch of other cleaning supplies. They head back downstairs and are looking at the small kitchen area. They see an open laptop on the counter with a pad of paper and a pen next to it on one side. On the other side, it looks like purchase orders, some USPS packing tape. These appeared to be items that BJ and Erica would use to send out merchandise in connection to their eBay store. So it looks like they were working on vacation. Could it be possible that they didn't have anything to do with Joshua and Jeannie? Maybe Erica stole their IDs or got a hold of them somehow, but something's just not adding up. There's a glass dining table with some water bottles on it, some photos, a lighter, and an ashtray, more keys and a substance that looks like cocaine. There's also a random little note on the table. It says it's a to-do list. It says, stuff to do at the house, find jean shorts, hook up the cable, among other things that I can't see in this photo. Then one of the officers yells for Bernal to come quickly. He found something right underneath that glass table. There were 2 spent bullets. Upon closer inspection, they appeared to be covered in blood and flesh. This is what they look like when the officers look down through that glass table, and here they are up close. This is definitely enough for a full search warrant. One of these bullets looked like it had actually been taken out of someone's flesh. Meanwhile, BJ and Erica are booked for burglary, and all their personal belongings are confiscated. Those will be searched too, and it's clear to see that Erica's designer purse is full of what appears to be very expensive jewelry. We know that she's into collecting jewelry, just like her mom, and she's got a lot of it. But why would you be carrying thousands of dollars worth of jewelry on vacation? They collect all the items for further inspection. She is also wearing a necklace when she's arrested, so that's taken as well. Here are some items from Erica's purse. There was a camera, a watch, the spent shell casings that I mentioned before, some gift cards, a Blockbuster video card, a Gap credit card, an Old Navy card, chapstick, some photos, and a folded-up little origami. She had this on her. It was full of pictures of her and BJ on trips to different places like Vegas, Virginia Beach, and Florida. If you look closely, there's a little shell. It actually contained a change purse inside with some pills. Now on to the full CSI search. They're looking for evidence in the Rainbow condo. Is there a connection between Erica, BJ, Joshua, and Jeannie? As they rummage through the furniture and the closets, they notice Erica had brought an abundance of items with her. In the corner of their unit, there was a stack of boxes filled with scrapbooking materials and other things used to make decorations. It looked like Erica had practically brought her entire house with her on vacation. She had meticulously documented every detail of her and BJ's relationship, from the mundane to the over-the-top. They find that Erica has actually brought a lot of items on this vacation, and they're in these big plastic storage containers, including the scrapbook from July 1999 through August 2001. It says Beach and Laney on the cover. They open it up, and it's full of pictures of previous trips that the couple has taken. One from June 2001 shows them together, and of course Erica is wearing a Hooters shirt. But look on the right. It says, "Everyone settles in, even Bonnie and Clyde," with a picture of her hugging BJ. Bonnie and Clyde, well, there's something to this, but at this point, seeing it makes Bernal question things even more. I can't forget to mention there were also pet pythons in a cooler in the bedroom. Yeah, we'll get to that. They wonder why they're coming up through people's toilets and stuff in other places where they're not supposed to be. Then they find a connection on the table behind the couch. Bernal picks up keys, and there's a rubber placard on it that says Atlantis. It's the condo building that Joshua and Jeannie were staying at. Finally, there's an actual connection, even though it doesn't have a unit number or anything. But there's more. A stack of pictures was on the dining table, and on top, there's a sheet of thumbnail pictures of each picture, usually used to go back and get more prints of the ones you like. Well, even though these pictures are small, Bernal is looking at them, and he thinks he sees one that could be Joshua and Jeannie. He picks up the next picture in the stack, and it's literally a picture of Joshua and Jeannie. These pictures are inside BJ and Erica's condo rental, and they're from Erica's camera. The other pictures in the stack tell the story of everything BJ and Erica did on their trip to Ocean City. There were pictures of them at Hooters, at the beach, playing mini-golf, all normal, so generic. And then this. A picture of the couple that's been missing for a week now. They did meet, they took pictures of them, and the cup, you can clearly see it's from Secrets. There's the logo. Not only that, look at this, another picture of Joshua and Jeannie, and this time it's on the balcony of their condo rental at Atlantis. Clearly they didn't take this photo of themselves. It was either Erica or BJ. So they were there with them back at their place. No wonder there were so many wine glasses there. Armed with this evidence, Bernal wants to try questioning his suspects. He runs a background check and finds out that BJ has quite an impressive resume. Navy SEAL, Honor Man. Coincidentally, though it's rare, Bernal had been in the Marines and he too was an Honor Man. He hadn't met another one in his career, especially sitting across from him, being questioned about a missing couple. He felt like maybe, just maybe, BJ would see him as an ally, a friend, a fellow comrade. He goes into the interview room. It's 4 o'clock in the morning. He introduces himself, and right off the bat, he lets BJ know that he's a fellow Honor Man. He's like, "You want to know what happened?" He said, "Ask my wife. I'm not saying another word." I want a lawyer." He refused to say anything else. This wasn't his first rodeo. This man had been in military prison. He had been through conditioning to the extreme, possibly torture scenarios that taught him to hold his tongue before betraying his country. So simple questioning like this? No match. He wasn't going to say a word. They just put him back in a cell and moved on to his wife. She was in the middle of a nervous breakdown, crying hysterically, saying she was going to die if she couldn't see her husband. She was kicking and acting crazy. But finally, Burnell was able to get her to relax long enough for her to ask him if he wanted to make a deal. She said, "I'll tell you about the missing couple if you drop the burglary charges." Well, that sounded like a plan, but Burnell was waiting for forensics to come back with more information on anything significant found at the Rainbow condominiums, so that he could use this as leverage against Erica. As the search was being carried out, it appeared that even though BJ and Erica were supposed to be on vacation, it looked like they were actually doing some remodeling of their unit. In the condo's main bathroom, the one with the big nice tub, instead of relaxing in there, it looked to detectives as though drywall was being put up. There was spackle on the wall, and the bathroom was in pristine condition. It seemed strange to them. Why would a couple spend their vacation doing this task? They began to wonder if they were trying to hide something. Was there something in the bathroom that they wanted to conceal? Oh, there was! To the naked eye, the bathroom appeared to have nothing wrong with it, but as the technicians went down low and looked underneath the vanity, there was a literal blood mark on the underside, as though someone had been hiding underneath and clearly bleeding and put their hand on top. At that point, they were onto something, so they really started to look in that area. They pulled out the drawers, and sure enough, there was a drop of blood that had pooled between the back of the drawer. You can see it right here. So they fully removed the 2 drawers, and more blood. The baseboards have spray marks on them. It's a little hard to see against the black bottom section, but with certain lighting, you can see there's a lot of blood here. And if you look lower, it's in the cracks of the tile underneath the drawers, right in the grout, essentially dyeing it red. When they measure the side of the wall where they see this pooled blood, they can tell at one point it was an inch deep before it was cleaned up. The team was shocked by the sheer quantity of blood in this bathroom. It indicated that this crime was extreme. It was brutal. There was no doubt in their minds that something ominous had occurred in this bathroom. They took samples from the scene to be further investigated. They weren't done. They were now finding blood all over. There was evidence of blood inside the jacuzzi tub and the drain. After digging behind the freshly painted wall and drywall, the investigators found a bullet hole and a fragment. It went right through to the other side. You can see it right here. They dismantled the bathroom, ripped out the vanity, and found even more evidence and dried blood flowing through the cracks underneath the sink. There was a new door put on. When they took out the drain covers on the sink, they were covered in blood. While doing this, there was also a clump of hair, and when they went to pick it up, they found out it was attached to a piece of scalp. Unbelievable. The hot tub in this condo's bathroom overlooked the beach and had these 2 glass panes. They were covered with handprints. It looked like someone had been trapped inside and desperately banging on the glass for help. I can actually picture what could have happened in this bathroom. But why? Burnell wants to find out. So he does what BJ told him to do. He asked Erica, he's like, "Sure, we can come up with the deal. What happened? Why were you in Ocean City? Let's start there." Erica all of a sudden becomes very talkative. Immediately, she explains why she and her husband had been there. She said that since their work life was so hectic, they hadn't been able to enjoy a proper honeymoon. Fortunately, Erica's father had come to the rescue and set them up in the suite at the Rainbow condominiums. But what about Joshua and Jeannie? How did they fit into all of this? Burnell confronted Erica with Joshua and Jeannie's pictures that they found in her condo rental. At this point, she had no choice but to admit that she and BJ had met them. You may have guessed it, but remember the couple that boarded the drunk bus? The ones without the exact change? That was Erica and BJ. Joshua helped them that night. Erica told Burnell that they sat down next to them, introduced themselves and said, "Hi, I'm Erica with a K, and this is my husband BJ." And Jeannie said, "I'm Jeannie, and this is Joshua." They were headed to Secrets, where BJ had promised Joshua and Jeannie a drink for their generosity. The line outside was long. It took them over an hour to get in. Erica explained she was having very bad anxiety, and she takes Xanax to relax. She had some with her and had been taking more than usual while drinking. Once they were inside, they were having a great time, dancing and hanging out, until last call. They wanted to continue the party, so Erica suggested they all go back to their penthouse suite to take a dip in the hot tub and hang out. She said she didn't smoke, but BJ did, and Joshua had mentioned that he had some weed back at his condo. So the plan was to stop by Atlantis, so that Jeannie and Joshua could snag the weed and get their bathing suits before going back to Erica and BJ's. They left loaded onto the bus together and went up to Joshua and Jeannie's unit. They hung out for a bit while the couple gathered what they needed, drank some wine, and then got back on the bus once again to go to their suite. But Erica said something happened. "You remember those 2 weird 911 calls? I'm telling you. This story is deep, it's twisted, and it's all over the place." Well, Erica explains that they arrived at their suite around 2:30 in the morning, and Jeannie and Joshua were so impressed, saying, "Wow, this place is so nice." Erica got some beers, and everyone was just checking out the place. Then BJ, Jeannie, and Joshua were sitting at the round glass table smoking some weed. Jeannie at one point wanted to get in her bikini, so Erica directed her over to the main bathroom upstairs to change. Erica said she was just doing her own thing because BJ and Joshua were still smoking. She was just tidying up, OCD and all that. As she started looking for her brown Hooters bag, you know how she gets when she can't find something. She gets major anxiety. When she was looking, she saw her red purse, her beloved favorite Coach purse. It was like a pet to her. She told Detective Bernal she loved Coach, said she was addicted to Coach, and that she even carried her pills in a little matching red Coach pouch inside the bigger red Coach purse. That's important. She goes on to explain that the purse wasn't in the spot where she knew she put it. It had been moved, and she freaked out. She knew if she hadn't touched it, and there were people there who were drunk, she was panicking. When she didn't see the smaller bag that she keeps inside with all of her valuables, including a $10,000 ring that her grandma had given to her, in addition to $7,000 worth of other items, she frantically tried to locate this bag. She said everyone was just laughing and hanging out, but she couldn't get past the fact that her things were missing. She starts searching the place. Her OCD is acting up, and she thought, "I don't know this couple. They could clearly be conning us. Maybe they stole it." Jeannie left their site to go change. What if she had taken Erica's things? That's when Erica said she went upstairs and made the first 911 call. She had shown Jeannie all of her stuff earlier in the night, including 200 Xanax pills, and now they were all gone. It had to be her. She was convinced of it. So she made that call at 3:01 a.m. Erica explained that while she was on the phone, she heard someone pick up the other line. Remember her saying that? Like, "Oh, I think someone's listening." She was paranoid, so she asked the operator for a direct number and then hung up. That's when she said she heard footsteps, so she hid. I'm thinking, you have a literal Navy SEAL husband and weapons, why would you be hiding? Erica says that some time went by, and she called 911 again. We know that either she hung up or the line went dead before the officers could be requested. She explained that Joshua came upstairs, either to change or check on her, and he asked her if everything was okay. But then she claimed he started to flirt with her and even tried to kiss her. She kinda goes off saying, "My stuff is missing," and Joshua was like, "What do you mean?" Erica says that she was angry and yelling, and that's when BJ heard. So BJ and Jeannie ran upstairs asking, "What's going on?" Erica tells the detective, "I think BJ thought that Joshua was trying to pull some moves on me because he's like, what the f is going on?" That's when she relayed what had happened. Her valuables were missing. BJ got right in Joshua's face, yelling at him, "Where's my wife's stuff?" Erica explained that BJ was demanding that Joshua and Jeannie take off their clothes to prove that they weren't stashing the items somewhere. In fear, they did what they were told to do. They were trembling and upset. Jeannie was almost in tears. It was clear they didn't have anything on them. And then all of a sudden, Erica said the couple just ran into the bathroom and locked the door. Remember the handprints on the window? Perhaps this is when they were attempting to make a run for it. But BJ, now in a rage, wanted them out and kept pounding on the door to no avail. That's when BJ grabbed a gun and shot right through the door. Well, I guess that's why they had to remove it and replace it. Erica says BJ was aiming for the doorknob, but once the door was open, they realized that the bullet had accidentally hit Joshua in the arm. He was now in more of a frantic mode, holding it with a towel to stop the bleeding. Jeannie was terrified. She was screaming and hiding under the vanity. Erica said that BJ was just telling her to shut up, but she wouldn't. That's when Joshua asked BJ, "Why are you doing this?" Out of nowhere, to Erica's surprise, BJ replied, "See you later, motherfucker," before shooting Joshua right in the head in front of his girlfriend. Jeannie was so fearful at this point. Erica recalled how terrified this poor woman was. She had just witnessed her boyfriend being executed right in front of her. Jeannie was trying to protect herself, even using her boyfriend's body as a shield, trying to squeeze further back as far as she could into the tiniest space, whimpering like a little baby. That's what Erica said. Erica was just frozen. She didn't know what to do. She said it was self-defense. At that point, she was rummaging through the clothing that this couple had just removed from their bodies and found that her purse wasn't there. She said she didn't actually know that Joshua was dead. It was all a blur. When she turned around and realized what had happened, she looked at BJ and said, "What the fuck did you do?" She got a glimpse into the bathroom and saw that Joshua was foaming at the mouth with blood. Erica said that at that point, she peed her pants. When BJ saw it, he started to make fun of her. All of a sudden, Erica tells detectives that BJ turned the gun on Jeannie and tried to shoot her, but he missed. That's the bullet that went through the wall. Then he walked up to her at point-blank range and shot her in the left shoulder. Erica said there was blood everywhere. It was on the walls, the tub, and all over the floors. Bernal was still listening, but he was thinking a .357 Magnum. That's where the bullets came from. That kind of gun wouldn't have caused such a huge amount of blood spatter, so he was already having doubts about this version of the story, but he continued to listen. Erica said that both she and BJ were pacing in and out of the bathroom, trying to think of what to do next. However, there was no sign of any blood outside that bathroom. There was light-colored carpet with no blood at all. At this point, she tells them she packed walkie-talkies and BJ took one of them while she took the other. He left to make sure that no cops had heard the gunshots, and she was looking for her items all over. She ended up finding them under the bed. Well, he knew this was a lie because he had pictures of the bed, and they also measured it. It was only like an inch from the floor. There's no way all of her items were underneath that bed. That's when she tells BJ over the walkie-talkie, "I found my purse." He comes back and tells her that the bodies are going to start smelling really bad, so they have to get rid of them fast. She said she didn't know what to do. BJ put a gun to her head and forced her to help him. Erica confessed to helping BJ dispose of Joshua and Jeannie's bodies in the most gruesome way. She said that they had to cut them into pieces, so they placed them in the jacuzzi tub, and they did exactly that, carefully separating their heads and limbs. At one point, she said that BJ was butt naked with blood all over him and had a huge hard-on that he was getting off on all this. Organs were floating in the bloody bathtub, and he even wanted to cook one of the legs. Detective Bernal couldn't believe what he was hearing and wanted to clarify if any human remains had been cooked. She said no, not that she knew of. She didn't eat or cook anything, but she wouldn't give a definite answer on her husband's actions. She said she was sent out to the store to get garbage bags, so she did. Then they started placing the parts in separate bags, but Joshua's torso wouldn't fit. So BJ told Erica to go get one of his military canvas bags, and that is where BJ placed the torso. They loaded the bags in the Jeep. It was about 6 o'clock in the morning, and Erica said she took a shower. Then they drove to a nearby dumpster and just threw the bodies in there. Erica admitted that both she and BJ hadn't slept in over 24 hours at this point, and she was in and out of sleep while BJ was driving around to dispose of the bags. The next day, they went to Home Depot and got all those supplies to fix everything and clean the bathroom. This is a lot for someone to take in. For someone who's so devoted to her husband, it's also very odd that she's just so easy to pin it all on him. But he was an abuser. He was okay with killing people with his bare hands. He was a big guy on drugs. Not to mention, when they were booking him, they took off his clothing to check his body and noted he had a very large tattoo of a swastika right on his chest. Yeah, I'm sure that can say a lot of things about him. But for one, Bernal definitely thought it leaned towards him having a very violent nature. This man was strapped when they found him and Erica robbing the Hooters. He was dishonorably discharged and spent time in prison. No doubt, he was dangerous. Erica, on the other hand, was barely 100 pounds. She was thin, tiny, bubbly, and flirtatious during the interview. Despite the gravity of the situation, she seemed to be in her own little world, not even taking it seriously. She appeared oblivious to the seriousness of what she just admitted to the detectives. She actually thanked them. She said she was so appreciative that they caught them stealing so that she could break free of BJ's control. It did seem like Erica had gotten caught up in a very toxic relationship, but what was more important was finding Jeannie and Joshua. So detectives went down to check the Rainbow condo dumpsters. They were hoping that they would find the remains so that they could have them DNA tested. Then they would have more confidence in Erica's story and also proof that they were indeed deceased. But they didn't find anything in those dumpsters, so they went back and asked Erica for more information. Which dumpster was it? She agreed to show them. It's the mid-morning of June 1st. By now they're driving over to a beach in Delaware. She points them to a dumpster and says, "That's the one." They search and there's no bodies. However, there is carpet, drywall, things like that, but no bodies. She has them on a wild goose chase. They drive to a few more dumpsters in the area and still nothing. So they start to think Erica is lying. How much is she lying about? They turn up the heat. They tell her, "We don't believe you, and if you don't cooperate, then we're gonna go ahead and charge you with murder." She's like, "Okay, I will tell you everything, but I need to have immunity." They want to find Jeannie and Joshua. They have no choice. They agree to give her immunity if she can tell them where the bodies are. She tells them that they took them to all these different dumpsters all throughout Delaware, Maryland, and beyond, and that BJ used to work for grocery stores. Grocery store dumpsters were better because they get picked up more frequently due to how much waste they have with all the food going bad. And they also smell, so no one would suspect anything. So they dumped them in grocery store dumpsters. When Erica returned to jail, she got her one phone call, and of course, she called her daddy. Cookie and Mitch were at Memory Lane scrapbooking store expecting Erica and BJ back that night. Actually, Erica told Cookie they were stopping by a reptile show and then heading back. When she saw the phone ring, she never expected to hear Erica screaming on the other end. Mitch was outside at the time. He heard her scream, turned around and realized it was his wife. He rushed back in and he's like, "What's wrong?" She couldn't speak. She just handed him the phone. Erica's on the other line saying, "Please get here as fast as you can." She explained that she had been booked for burglary. Mitch is in utter disbelief. The first thought he had was, BJ really messed up his daughter's life. As soon as he hung up, he hopped on a private jet and started calling lawyers on his way to Ocean City with his wife. He called around and was referred to a man named Arcangelo Tumani. The guy was highly recommended. Mitch had no idea what Erica was looking at as far as the charges were concerned, but it became crystal clear when the lawyer started to dig in. This was more than burglary. The news was already out that Erica and her husband were suspected to be the killers in the double murder and dismemberment of a missing vacationing couple, and that it happened at the Rainbow condominium, the place that Mitch's friend owned. Mitch knew this much to be true. He told the lawyer this was all because of BJ. He knew from the moment he met him that he was trouble. Prison was no place for his little girl, and he was going to do whatever it took to get her back home. Detectives contacted the sanitation department, telling them what was going on, wanting to figure out the garbage routes. Luckily, the waste management industry is very organized. They basically know all of the routes, where each dumpster goes, and which section of this huge landfill the trash would be located. The only thing is they need to know specifics on when the bodies were actually deposited into the receptacles. That matters in figuring out where they would be now in the landfill. This is a lot of work. It takes until the afternoon of June 3rd to narrow down where this trash would be. The landfill was about 45 minutes away, and if you had never smelled hot garbage, I don't know, just imagine the worst smell: vomit, rotten meat, dead animals. Now combine all of that with 100-degree weather, and you'd be close to what it was like at that landfill. Bernal arrived around 4:30. It was humid and rancid smelling. There were seagulls, rotten food, and bugs, hornets flying around, and it was vast. Look at it. These are the actual police photos. This place is massive. They had backhoes out there. They had detectives wearing protective gear, diligently sifting through mounds of rotting garbage. It was nasty. It smelled so bad that even cadaver dogs couldn't do their job because they couldn't tell the difference between a dead body and just garbage. But about an hour into the search, that's when they spot something. It looked like a leg. I am going to be blurring it here, but you can still see how it stands out among the trash. Once this was discovered, everything stood still. It was unbelievable. They knew that it must be Guinea or Joshua, and it intensified the search. But hours passed and they still hadn't found anything. Finally, they found a human arm, then another arm with a hand attached. When they gave it a closer look, they realized it had a tattoo on it. Yes, it was the karate logo. It was Joshua's arm. Later, they located the canvas duffel bag, 5 feet in length, and inside was Joshua's torso, wrapped up in blankets that came from the Rainbow condominium unit. It's obvious that they have found Joshua and Jeannie, or what's left of them, but they still had to officially confirm it with DNA analysis. So, the remains were sent for testing. They continued to search, but they could not go into a second day. It was unbearable. They had enough to know that they could charge BJ and Erica with murder. They wanted to continue. They really did. Bernal felt awful. He wondered if they kept going, would they find everything? He wanted to for Jeannie and Joshua's family's sake, but it wasn't possible. Joel Todd was the prosecuting attorney on the case. He was very experienced. He was knowledgeable, a veteran lawyer. On Monday, June 3rd, BJ and Erica were going to be at their first hearing in front of a judge. The search of the Rainbow condominium was still ongoing, and this case was about to really intensify. I know it already seems like we know exactly what happened. A domineering, evil, crazy ex-Navy SEAL in a drug-induced rage killed 2 people. But just wait, because it's worse. Here's the thing. BJ wasn't talking, Erica was. He had a court-appointed attorney. She had the best that her daddy could afford. Erica's attorney made a deal. If she was telling the truth, which they would confirm via polygraph, then she would not be held for the murders, only charged with gun possession and illegal disposal of bodies. But neither one of them was getting out on bond, that's for sure. Meanwhile, Mitch was working with the lawyer, trying to make sure that Erica didn't have to see the inside of a prison. It was decided by the prosecutor, after deals and circumstances were discussed, that BJ and Erica would be tried separately in 2 trials. Erica would testify against BJ in return for lesser charges. Now they had to build cases against them. This was a request by Joshua and Jeannie's family. Speaking of their families, they were beyond devastated. Poor little Zach. His mom didn't know how to tell him his father was never coming home. His mom and his stepdad sat him down and told him, "Your dad is gone." He was speechless. He walked out of the house, went to his little tire swing, and swung in the yard for hours, not saying a word. This poor family had lost 2 people in 2 years, both murdered and dismembered. No justice in either case. The autopsies were being conducted on the remains, and the pathologist discovered a bullet fragment still stuck inside Joshua's torso near the shoulder area. That was it. They determined he died as a result of homicide. Forensic evidence for Jeannie was scarce. They only had one of her legs. However, in order to classify it as homicide, the pathologist determined that her leg had been removed from her body, and the bleeding would not have stopped unless medical attention had been given. Therefore, she died as a result of homicide. Erica had not stopped talking since the arrest. She had given detectives a lot of information about her and BJ's relationship. She explained that once they got together, it was a constant party. He introduced her to drugs, to snorting her anxiety medications instead of just taking them the way they were prescribed. This was the beginning of what she said became a full-blown addiction. Her life just spiraled out of control because she wanted to appease her controlling husband. All of this, in the beginning, had to do with him cheating. It was when he had to live in Arkansas for a few weeks after they were married that she found emails on his computer going back and forth with some girl. It was October of 1999. This is what she said. It sent her into the deepest depression. She was obsessed with making sure BJ wasn't with another woman. She followed him, listened to his phone calls, snooped through all of his stuff, and finally, she even spoke to the woman herself, who confirmed it was true. She had slept with BJ. The woman was able to provide information that only someone would know if they had actually been with him. Erica said this caused her to go into clinical depression. She was taking Xanax and Valium, and then of course at some point BJ told her to snort it and to drink alcohol. After the cheating, Erica could not be away from BJ. She said she just didn't trust him, so she became obsessed about where he was going and what he was doing. That's why she would show up at his steel training. She knew that he had a violent nature, because at one point, to stop her from doing this, BJ emailed the mistress and said, "Hey, you better tell my wife I never effed you, and if you don't call her and tell her that it was all a lie, I'll drive down to Arkansas and amputate your bastard kids with a butter knife. Then I'll board up the windows and doors and torture you." He signed it, "Your worst enemy, BJ." Erica also explained that she wanted to please BJ so that he wouldn't have reasons to cheat, so she went along with everything that turned him on. It wasn't sex anymore, it was getting in trouble. He would deliberately try to get cops to chase him. He had that souped-up car, and he would pull up and taunt officers going over 100 miles an hour. Erica said he even made her pee her pants once. That's what got him revved up for sex. Then they graduated to cocaine and ecstasy. She said they were doing it every night of the week. She told the detectives how he made her get an abortion after he tricked her. At first, he said, "I want to have kids," so they weren't being careful on purpose. Erica ends up getting pregnant. She's excited to tell him, and he says, "I don't want kids. You better remove it or I'll remove it with a coat hanger." She felt like she had no choice, and after she went through with it, he praised her, saying that having this procedure showed her loyalty. He was testing her. He warned her to get pregnant on purpose, just to see if she would get rid of the baby for him. Erica explains that she got a cross tattoo on her abdomen to remember the baby. He was also obsessed with Hitler, and the swastika tattoo was because he believed in everything Hitler stood for. He even named one of their snakes after him, and he liked snakes because they were the devil's creatures. The other snakes were named HIV and Bonnie and Clyde. Recall that picture, here they are, Bonnie and Clyde, settling in. She was referring to the snakes. She said that he was very racist. He would call her the N-word because of her hair. It was kinky and curly. He would also yell racist comments out the window at random people and threaten to shoot them, even saying that if he killed them, no one would miss them because essentially they weren't white. All of this is sick. He would also attack her weight. She was rare or thin because BJ apparently would call her a fat ass and tell her she was overweight. That fueled her need to constantly use drugs because it helped her stay thin. She was so into this addiction. Remember that South America trip that her dad funded? They picked Chile for a reason. They brought back a cooler full of pills. Xanax and Valium were only $90 for $1. To fund their habit, stealing was the best of both worlds. It would turn BJ on and pay for them to continue their sex, drugs, and partying. He was also a locksmith in the past and could pick any lock. So first, he began with breaking into ATMs. It started small, but then it escalated to different stores. Since it was making BJ happy, she went along with it. Then it was the threesomes. She explained that BJ insisted that in order to be the cool wife, she had to let him go to strip clubs and bring other girls into the bedroom. They had rules, she said. One of the reasons they started to go to Hooters was so that she could pick out girls for them. This evolved into selling merchandise on their eBay business, but then ultimately they began stealing Hooters clothes, and they hit up a number of these stores without getting caught. Then she found out that BJ had cheated on her again, and it was another downward spiral. She wanted his love and approval all the time. She felt like no one else would ever love her, and that's why she stayed. Things had gotten mundane lately before their trip to Ocean City. She persuaded her dad to get them a place so that she could get away. She said BJ didn't want to have sex with her for months. He needed a thrill, new places, new people, new Hooters to steal from. Then, about the killings, it was all BJ. Erica said she had no idea he was going to do that, but he became an animal after he cut them up. He held both of their heads in his hands and wanted Erica to take a picture of him. She said she saw him standing over this blood-filled tub, and she vomited. When a bullet fragment that was located inside Joshua's torso was tested, it matched Erica's .357 revolver. That gun was found on her when she was robbing the Hooters restaurant. This was the first of many clues that Erica may have had way more to do with Joshua and Jeannie's murder than she was letting on. BJ had his own weapons. Yes, he could have used her handgun in the spur of the moment, like Erica said, but there was more. They had collected so much evidence, and it was telling a very different story than Erica's. First of all, when they were going through all the photographs that had been taken, they put them in chronological order. As they looked closely, they realized that Joshua's dragon ring could clearly be seen in a photo on his finger from when Jeannie and he were at the Secrets bar. It was found among the jewelry that was collected and indexed. It was also analyzed for DNA, and it had Joshua's blood on that ring, still on the ring after it was taken from Erica's necklace. Erica was wearing this bloody ring around her neck when she was arrested. As they looked closer at the pictures in chronological order, they discovered a horrifying fact. Erica was wearing Joshua's blood-covered ring on her necklace after they were reported missing. This was a trophy to her. She was a collector, and she was donning a dead man's ring. Then there's the knife, the one that was found on her at Hooters. It tested positive for Jeannie and Joshua's DNA. There was still human tissue stuck on the serrated blade. It was her .357 handgun that was used in connection to this crime. She had an obsession with Hooters merchandise. It was her wearing Hooters shirts in almost every picture. But not only that, she documented everything in her and BJ's life since the day they got together, and she kept documenting everything. Even BJ's standing in front of Home Depot getting the supplies they were going to use to cover up their crime. She collected Jeannie and Joshua's IDs. She kept them as tokens to remember their crime spree. It was her purse that the couple supposedly stole that caused this whole situation to escalate. It seemed like more of a plan than unfortunate circumstances. But Erica was willing to take that polygraph, and she was going to testify against her husband. She just had to take the pre-polygraph interview, where they ask you a bunch of prepared questions to prepare you for the actual test. Well, they thought this was only going to be about an hour or so, since they had already gone over and agreed upon the questions. It took 4 hours. When the administrator came back out, she said she couldn't go forward with the test. Erica, apparently being afraid of getting caught in a lie, admitted she helped in the killings and even orchestrated them. Her lawyer was floored. Erica was extremely nervous. She was afraid and didn't want the truth to be revealed in this polygraph exam, so she changed her story again. And this went on. She changed her story several times. But during this interview, Erica relayed a chilling tale of what happened after BJ shot Jeannie. She said that he ordered her to make sure that Jeannie was dead, and without even checking for a pulse, Erica stabbed her and slit her throat. When she was recounting the event, Erica said she was shocked at how much pressure it took to pierce through Jeannie's skin. Then she admitted to stabbing Jeannie in the chest, all while she was trying to hide underneath that vanity. The deal was off the table. She and BJ would be tried for murder in separate trials. BJ's was first, in April 2003. Now that the deal was off, Erica wasn't going to be allowed to testify against her husband. BJ never talked. It was all Erica. He never admitted to a thing. As a matter of fact, all he ever said was, "If you want to know what happened, ask my wife." His public defender pinned it all on her. The prosecution had a difficult time making their case because there wasn't that much concrete evidence against BJ. It was all circumstantial. But there was a lot more direct evidence against Erica. The biggest shock was when BJ took the stand and spoke for the first time. His version of events was a lot different. Most importantly, he explained he didn't kill Jeannie and Joshua. His wife did. He said when they left Secrets, he decided he hadn't slept in a while. He was really tired and was going to take a nap while Erica and Joshua and Jeannie went back to the other condo to get their bikinis and the weed. Then they were going to bring it back over to the Rainbow condos. Well, he goes back alone as Erica heads over to the Atlantis, and he realizes when he gets to the door, he doesn't have the key. He's pissed, he's too tired to deal with it, so he goes into the Jeep and passes out. The next thing he knows, there's banging on the window and it's his wife. He doesn't remember what time it was. At this point, she's just telling him, "We need to leave." She said they have a problem and she needs his help. He said he is half asleep at this point, still coming off drugs and alcohol. She was saying all kinds of things, but it was clear to him that she had hurt someone. He followed her up to the condo and into the bathroom, and that is when he saw the two people that they had met earlier on the bus. He is a trained medic. He said his first instinct was to check their pulses, and he did. They were deceased, and he realized that his wife had done this. He's sitting on the bed with his head in his hands, not knowing what to do. He didn't know what happened. He didn't witness anything. He didn't know if she snapped, if there was a reason why all this happened, but he was loyal to his wife, and he knew that he had to help her. He admitted it was his idea to cut up and dispose of the bodies in different dumpsters. It wasn't his gun. He didn't collect or save any tokens like Erica did, and he never admitted to anything. The jury ends up clearing him on all charges against Joshua, but they can't rule out his involvement in Jeannie's death because no one knows how she died. He is convicted of second-degree murder and first-degree assault for Jeannie's death, sentenced to 38 years in prison with the possibility of parole. While Joshua's family was not okay with this, his brother Mark was interviewed by the press, almost in tears. He stated that there is no justice. They took away a good brother. But Erica's trial was next on June 3, 2003. In addition to her confession to stabbing Jeannie, there was a wealth of evidence that the state had to ensure a conviction in this double murder trial. Forensic evidence linked Erica to the crime scene, as well as the couple's stolen credit cards and the property she had in her possession. However, Erica attempted to convince the detectives that she was an abused spouse, but those that were close to Eric and BJ painted a much different picture of their marriage. According to those aware of the couple's relationship, Erica wasn't the victim. She was the aggressor. The pictures of Erica and BJ that they took in Ocean City before the murders of Joshua and Jeannie were of a happy couple enjoying their vacation. After the murders, they still took photos, same type of photos of them enjoying their vacation, like nothing happened. It didn't show her being scared. Actually, she appeared to be more relaxed, not living in fear of her husband at all. It depicted a woman who was content and happy to be on the beach with her husband. Then a witness came forward. Her name is Melissa Seeley. It was Tuesday in the middle of the night on May 28th, a few days after Joshua and Jeannie met up with Erica and BJ. Melissa looks at her phone because it keeps ringing, and she realizes she has 16 missed calls from her friend Todd. He is wasted, begging Melissa to please come meet him and his friends out in Ocean City. They got a flat tire and they need help. She's in Delaware 30 minutes away, but she agrees. She pulls up and sees the blue Jeep on a jack and she fixes the tire. She's introduced to BJ and Erica. Erica seemed completely out of it, but then all of a sudden she snapped out of that and said, "I'm so thankful. Can we buy you a drink?" But something about the way she looked seemed weird to Melissa. She's like, "You know what? I'd rather not." But the three of them, it was like 3 against 1, convinced Melissa to just have one drink. So they went to a nearby bar called Fishtails. There are pictures of Melissa and them at this bar. Melissa explained to the jury that she didn't want to take photos. They were complete strangers. But it was Erica who kept insisting that she have photos with her. Later on, Melissa wanted to leave again, and she was trying to, but Erica kept insisting they come back to their condo. She was making all sorts of excuses. "Can you please drive us? We don't want to drive drunk." She was just desperate and begging them. That's when Melissa hears BJ say something under his breath. Something like, "I can't control my wife." He said something like, "I listened to her because she's got a gun and she'll kill a cop." Melissa wanted to get out of there. She's with these strangers that are totally out of their minds at this point, totally drunk and wasted on drugs. She doesn't know what's going on, but she agrees that she and Todd can follow them back to their condo to make sure they're there safely. It's only a few minutes away. When she gets there, BJ is banging on her window saying, "Please, please, you gotta help. Erica's passed out. I need help getting her up to the room." Really, she's like 100 pounds. She can't carry herself. Anyway, they get inside the penthouse, and it's like Erica snapped out of it. She's like, "Do you want a tour?" She's being all nice to Melissa. Of course, Melissa's pretty impressed by the building. Erica's bragging that her dad built it, and she's taking her on a tour while the guys were getting a beer. Listen to what happens next. All of a sudden, Erica is like, "I want to show you this ring that my grandma gave me. Oh no, I can't find my purse." The same thing again. Melissa's like she was frantically looking around saying, "I need it now, it's so important." Melissa jumped into action. She's trying to help, hoping the stranger will calm down. That's when she noticed the door to the bathroom wasn't on the hinges. It was leaning up against the door frame, and it looked like it had a bullet hole through it. So, she makes her way back to the living room. She wants to get out of there. That's when Erica starts insinuating that Melissa stole her purse. She's yelling to BJ saying, "This lady is trying to run some con on us. She took all of our valuables, all of our drugs. I don't know this woman." Melissa's just sitting there insisting she did not take her purse. At this point, BJ pulls out a gun and says, "I've already killed 2 people, and I'm not afraid to do it again." However, in the midst of all of this, BJ lifts up a couch cushion and there's Erica's purse. All of a sudden, she snaps out of it and is like, "Oh my gosh, thank you so much for finding my purse." Does this make sense now? It's a ruse. Erica was hiding her own purse. It's all coming together. Hide your purse, get your husband riled up, claim somebody stole it, and then kill people. There was so much more. Witness after witness ripped Erica apart. It didn't seem like she just had OCD. It was more like borderline personality disorder with psychosis, drug-induced as well. There were stories of how Erica could not accept rejection to the point where, remember her boyfriend that left her right before she met BJ? She was at a club and slammed her head into a brick wall repeatedly until it cracked open and was bleeding. It was for attention. Once she had BJ in her claws, she would not let him do anything. She controlled his every move, threatened to hurt herself if he didn't come home. It was her plan to get him kicked out of the military, constantly making a scene, barging into his meetings, finding out where he was at confidential assignments and ruining his career so that he would have no choice but to be with her 24/7. She didn't want him to get an honorable discharge because that would take too long. With every one of her threats, BJ got more and more caught in the middle. He wanted his career, but he also didn't want to walk in and find his wife sat on the floor because he wouldn't leave at that instant to be by her side. It was always something. Another Navy SEAL wife came forward, and she said that BJ was not a violent person. She was a former friend who knew him before Erica. Her husband was one of his SEAL buddies. She said BJ was shy, and Erica changed everything. She was obsessed with him. Erica told this woman not to look at BJ and never to talk to him. This was after a normal interaction with BJ, someone she had known for years, and then Erica just came into his life. One time, he was only 10 minutes late from coming home after hanging out with a friend. Erica stormed into this other Navy SEAL's apartment, screaming at him and his wife, throwing food on the floor, and saying, "Where is he?" They were like, "Calm the F down, he's about to pull up." She would constantly call his phone over and over again, 20 times back to back in the span of minutes. It was so much that he had to shut his phone off. This woman also confirmed that it was Erica's idea to get an abortion because she was doing so many drugs. She thought the child would turn out having issues, and her therapist even agreed. BJ's mom took the stand. She talked about how Erica pulled a gun on her when she was trying to come to her son's rescue when he was imprisoned in the military. She did that. She said her son was a changed person ever since Erica came into his life. There was so much evidence against this woman. So much evidence. For example, remember the glass windows near the hot tub I told you about? There were handprints on the inside. Well, there were handprints on the outside as well. Why is this important? Because they believe that with walkie-talkies, Erica was outside directing BJ to where Jeannie and Joshua were in the bathroom. She was his eyes. They did this, but it was BJ's testimony that sealed her fate. He told the same story that he told at his own trial, that he had nothing to do with the murders, but he went into way more detail this time. Here are some of the things that came out. He wasn't allowed to talk to anyone, not even his own family. They weren't allowed to have the color purple on anything in their house, anywhere, or on anything, because one of his ex-girlfriends loved the color purple. Erica wasn't skinny because he would force her not to eat. It was because she would refuse to eat if he wouldn't come home. She would literally starve herself until he came back. BJ also said that Erica stabbed Jeannie in the side, in the exact same place where Erica got a tattoo a couple of days after the killing. A tattoo to remember the murder, just like she got after the abortion. This time, it was a cobra. She also literally broke off a piece of the bathroom door and brought it with her to the hardware store and told a lady that was helping them, "This is all that's left of our door this weekend." She wanted to match the paint. They ended up getting an entirely new door, but she was bragging. She kept the IDs, the ring, and the shell casings, all to document her crimes. He told the jury that despite the smiling in the pictures he took with her, he wasn't a happy person. He knew what he did was wrong. He shouldn't have helped her dispose of the bodies. The prosecution made a point to say that the only reason Melissa and Todd were alive is because BJ wasn't passed out in the Jeep this time, that Erica was playing her same ruse, losing her purse, and BJ was the one that found it. If he wouldn't have been there, they don't know what would have happened. Erica probably would have killed them like she had done before. In closing, the prosecutor showed a slideshow of the pictures of Erica eating crab legs right after the murders, and the ring on her neck as a token of what she was proud of having done. A picture of her fixing the bathroom, going to Home Depot, documenting her little fantasy of being Bonnie and Clyde, the name she picked for her pythons. She was evil, calculated, controlling, and guilty. She was the mastermind, the puppet master. According to Erica's defense team, though, she only participated in the murders out of fear, as a woman under her husband's control. However, the physical evidence and Erica's own admissions contradicted this claim. The jury ultimately found Erica guilty on both counts of first-degree murder for the deaths of Jeannie and Joshua. The judge sentenced her to life plus 20 years. 2 years after Erica and BJ were convicted, Eugene McCollum was arrested for several murders and was named the most likely suspect in the murder of Joshua's niece, Kelly. He was convicted of 2 murders and sentenced to life in prison. However, just like in BJ's case with Joshua, this murderer was never charged for Kelly's murder or any of the other countless ones he could have committed in his years of experience. The lead detective, Scott Bernal, had never encountered individuals as cruel as BJ and Erica. Even now, he still remembers the shock and disgust he felt when he was looking at that crime scene. The amount of violence and disregard for human life was too much to bear. I want to tell you something that's very important, but before I do, I want to say, to me, both of them did this. I think they were in a toxic relationship and they fed off each other, and they were on drugs. These people didn't even seem human. They were animals. But they knew what they were doing, and they wanted to do it. I truly believe that Erica was just a girl who got whatever she wanted, and when she didn't get it, she still got what she wanted because she would force it to happen. Well, after all of this, I have some good news. Zachary Ford, Joshua's son, found life to be so difficult without his dad. He couldn't say his dad's name for years because it would instantly bring him to tears. He had a passion for sports and dreamed of becoming a professional athlete in Boston, but when his father was murdered, that changed. He decided to pursue a path of justice and honor instead. He wanted to become a criminal prosecutor so that he could make sure his father's death was not in vain. He wanted to ensure that those who commit such heinous crimes are brought to justice. In 2022, BJ was up for parole, but Zachary Ford was determined to keep him behind bars. It was the 20th anniversary of the murders of Joshua and Jeannie, and Zachary was going to make sure justice was served. He attended the parole hearing and did everything he could to make sure BJ remained behind bars, from testifying to speaking to the media. His efforts were successful, and BJ was denied parole. His next hearing is in 2030, but there's a chance he'll be released before then. Meanwhile, little Miss Erica will be eligible for parole next year. Zach still has his dad's dragon ring that Joshua used to wear, the same one he was wearing when he was murdered. It's a daily reminder that his life has been changed forever. He cherishes that ring, and whenever he needs a reminder of his father, he just holds on to it, and that keeps his memory alive. The tragic deaths of Joshua Ford and Jeannie Crutchley mark the end of two remarkable lives. Joshua helped anyone, regardless of their situation, and on that fateful night in May of 2002, Joshua saw a couple in need on that bus and decided to help them. Neither he nor Jeannie knew that these people had malicious intentions. Zachary even looks back on his wedding day with a heavy heart, knowing his father couldn't be present. It's difficult to bear that his father will never meet his children or grandchildren. He'll do everything in his power to ensure his father's legacy lives on.